Chapter 209 Ma Fan, where are we? Chun Yuqing curiously poked his head out of the ship. After traveling for more than 3 months underwater, the three felt very suffocated. Little Mountain Jia, Zhua Mo said uncertainly. None of them had ever been to Little Mountain Jia and had never paid any attention to information about Little Mountain Jia. The fresh air made the trio's chests instantly become refreshed and expand. They all poked their heads out of the cabin to greedily suck in the air. On both sides of the river were endless series of mountain peaks. But quickly, the three completely shut up. They looked dazedly at the mountain peaks at the two sides. Smashed rocks and broken trees laid everywhere. Occasionally, there were corpses and pieces of clothing. The mountains which had originally been green were now barren. It can't be this bad, Chun Yucheng's voice drifted out as if it was sleep-talking. Gong Sun Cha was the first to respond. His face was not very good, lowering his head and saying to himself, "War has begun." Zhua Mo only looked, not knowing what to say. This area must have experienced fierce fighting. Thinking about the Yao troops above the desolate wood reef, Zhua Mo didn't need to guess to know who had accomplished such destruction. His heart couldn't help but feel fear. If he hadn't escaped in time, this would have also been his outcome. Let's be careful. The road probably won't be safe. Zhua Mo and Gong Sun Cha exchanged a look, and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The date seed ship flew into the sky and floated in midair. Where should we go? Gong Sun Cha asked a very realistic question. We can only take one step and look one step. Zhua Mo's face was expressionless, but his voice was full of helplessness. We aren't familiar with Little Mountain Jia, so let's first find someone to ask where the other Jia rivers of Little Mountain Jia are. Are there even still people in Little Mountain Jia? Gong Sun Cha's words made Zhua Mo's breathing uncontrollably stop. He turned around, and saw a matter-of-fact expression on Gong Sun Cha's soft face. For some reason, a cold chill seeped into his heart. His first response was, he definitely could not bully Gong Sun Shidi in the future. This guy was definitely vicious and devious. But Zhua Mo clearly wasn't a nice person either. Then our days are at an end. Just wait for others to come back to clean us up. Gong Sun Cha giggled, and didn't speak. Holding up his chin, he was thinking of something. Luckily, Gong Sun Cha's words were not proven right. On the third day, they encountered living Xiuzha. But when they saw the messy battlefield, Zhua Mo could only say, "Let's wait." The date seed ship shrunk back into the clouds, and secretly gazed at the fighting below. The two groups of Xiuzha were fighting, talismans and flying swords all over the air. Most of the people had a cultivation of Ningmai, only a rare few in Zhuji. Chun Yuqing only looked for a little while before turning to think about his husbandry. He wasn't interested in fighting and killing. Zhua Mo and Gong Sun Cha were so bored they were yawning. Why don't we do another round of war chess? Gong Sun Cha asked. Zhua Mo swept him with a look and shook his head. No, business first. Gong Sun Cha had become their strongest offensive force now. In the 3 months, this militant had improved with astounding speed, becoming more vicious and experienced in the art of commanding. The number of Ling beasts that had been ruined could not be counted. In his hands, the 3 golden armored guards could be called specters of war. Of course, Zhua Mo's wallet had also become fuller. Having seen the strong Yao army, having seen the strong Ling beasts under the water like the Moon-Eye Blackwater beast, especially after seeing the grand performances of the 3 golden armor guards under Gong Sun Shidi's command, the fight in front of them could not stir their interest. Thinking it over, Zhua Mo still decided to not wait, go get them to stop. Alright, Gong Sun Cha clearly didn't have any interest in opponents of this level. The two seemed to have completely forgot one of them was Ningmai and the other Zhuji, while the 2 groups down there were mostly Ningmai. The 3 golden armor guards that had been holding their swords moved, and disappeared from Gong Sun Cha's side. Ma Fan carefully maintained his distance from the others. 50 zhang to 100 zhang was his best attack range. In this range of distance, his sword scripture could reach its maximum power. Compared to the great majority, his luck was pretty good, and he had found the remains of a sword scripture. This sword scripture did not have a name, and the contents were nearly all lost, but the remains were enough for him to survive until now. It really was troublesome. He carefully controlled his rhythm, occasionally glancing out of the corner of his eye at his fellows. Luckily, this group situation wasn't bad. His heart relaxed slightly. Before this, he had always been alone. When he had encountered the Yao army passing by, seeing that battle that had no meaning, he understood that it was not possible for one person to survive in these troubled times. He had joined this little group. But how many times had he fought after joining this group? He didn't quite remember. After the Yao army left, Little Mountain Jie's society had collapsed and turned to chaos. Out of nowhere, he saw 3 golden lights out of the corner of his eye. There was an ambush. His heart shocked, he didn't hesitate in turning and running. His feet moved continuously, and his entire person was covered in a pile of fake and real illusions. The illusory movement method that he relied on to save his life. The opponent 60 zhang away from him had suddenly lost his opponent, his face full of shock, not understanding the situation. The 3 golden lights were like 3 sharp arrows that pierced straight into the people fighting. Pia pia pia. The rapid blows sounded out like rain hitting a banana leaf. The sounds rang in Ma Fan's ears as he ran furiously, his scalp prickled. It was troublesome now. He was still quite confident in his speed. The sword scripture that he cultivated might have been incomplete, but the strongest parts were the illusory movement method and the 3 sword moves. The illusory sword method had saved his life a few times already. He rejoiced inside that he had luckily saved some energy before. Otherwise, he would meet his death today. Just as he was thinking, the thundering crashes suddenly stopped. A strong feeling of danger appeared. Uh-oh. Hiss crack. A golden figure appeared in front of him out of thin air, the speed so quick that he didn't even manage to see the person's features. Troublesome. His feet changed direction and ran in another direction. Hiss crack. Another golden figure appeared in front of him. Trouble. At the same time, a hiss crack sounded behind him. I surrender. He raised both of his hands. However, the other clearly did not pay attention to him. His neck hurt, his vision darkened, and then he was unconscious. When he opened his eyes again, he released a breath. He hadn't died. However, when he completely opened his eyes, his heart went back up again, a gold fighter. He suddenly remembered what had happened before he was unconscious. This was really troublesome now. He finally managed to see what the golden people looked like. Their entire body was covered in golden scale armor. Under the sun, the dense golden scales rippled with golden light. The eyes under the golden scale armor were cold and murderous. Ma Fan did not doubt that if he dared to make a wrong move, the golden scale warriors would use that exaggeratedly large flame-red broadsword to slice off his head. Wait, heavens! His eyes blanked for an extremely short moment. Flames surrounded the exaggerated red broadsword. The golden-scaled warriors had thrust the sword into the ground. The soil around the tip of the sword slowly became black. 4th grade. This was a 4th grade broadsword. Ma Fan had worked alone for so long. From this experience, he had developed a great understanding of the market for these kinds of things. Naturally had his own methods for judging talismans. This broadsword was not ordinary. This was not what shocked him. Even if there was the addition of the golden-scaled armor that looked to have high defense power, he wouldn't feel shocked. What shocked him was what was on the 3. No wonder they could catch up to him. The thunder-flowing light wings, one of the most famous 4th grade flying talismans that could be brought on the market. It had appeared countless times in his dreams. If he had the thunder-flowing light wings, if they were added to his illusory movement method. Oh, he had the confidence he could escape from any Xiuzha under Jindan. His eyes flashed across the hands resting on the hilt of the sword. A light blue pair of gloves embroidered with a little elephant. 10,000 appearances gloves. The best love of body show. If you had those, you could tear animals apart with your bare hands. His thoughts wandered. A moment later, he remembered the crashes that had come behind him before he had become unconscious. To have been smashed by a guy wearing 10,000 appearances gloves. He shook and woke up. But when his eyes flashed across the snake pupil that was so cold and emotionless on the belt that the golden-scaled warriors were wearing, his body uncontrollably tensed again. Snake pupil belt. His eyes unconsciously landed on the pair of feet closest to him. The slightly delicate boots were slightly strange being paired with the glittering golden armor. But, when Ma Fan's gaze landed on the little sword on the shoes and the Big Dipper surrounding it, he only had one thought in his head: it really was troublesome now. Don't just look. Just sit up. A very young voice came from behind him. He hurriedly rolled up. He saw an expressionless face. It really was expressionless. The entire face seemed to be paralyzed. He had never seen such a strange face before. The thin body, with this wooden face, it looked like a zombie. However, this zombie was covered in valuable talismans. Ma Fan instantly woke up. He had heard before that many elders would have all kinds of strange habits and preferences. But the young Xiuzhe next to the zombie was quite delicate, a slight smile on his face. He looked very friendly. What are you called? The zombie opened. Ma Fan. As in troublesome. Having expected the other's response, Ma Fan hurriedly explained, Ma as in sesame, Fan for ordinary. Oh, the zombie slightly paused. Why are you guys fighting? Suemo pretended to be profound. Elder, they want to steal our Ling grains. Ma Fan didn't dare to conceal. Ling grains? Suemo was very surprised. He had made his living from farming Ling grains for several years but had never heard people fighting over Ling grains. Yes. Ma Fan perceptively detected the disbelief in Zuomo's voice and explained, Elder may not know. After the Yao army passed through, for some reason, the Ling energy in the Jia has gradually decreased. Not only has cultivation has become difficult to progress, but after a period of time, our stages may actually go down. Zuomo hurriedly channeled his Ling power and found that it was as Ma Fan had said. The surrounding Ling energy was very thin. He had the Mo matrix which would automatically take in Ling energy from the surroundings, which was why he had not detected it. Also, Gongsun Cha was obsessed with war chess and Chun Yucheng with his animals. The golden armor guards did not need to cultivate, so their procession had not discovered the change in the Ling energy. Zuomo suddenly shuddered in shock. Chapter 210 Collapse of Order. For the longest time, Ling grains had always been used to improve the body and as an aid to increase cultivation speed. Other than that, only those Xiuzhe who were heading to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia would use them. Due to this, the price of Ling grains was low and very steady in the long term. Otherwise, Zuomo would have already become rich. But right now, the Ling energy density at Little Mountain Jia had become low, and the importance of Ling grains had instantly become evident. Jingshi, Ling Dan, and Ling grains were the only items able to supply Ling energy. The Ling power contained in Jingshi was rich, but the impurities it contained needed to be purified and could not be used in the long term. Ling Dan was made with all kinds of Ling herbs and Ling materials, so the cost was too high. The Ling energy in the Ling foods were not just easy to absorb but did not harm the body. If used for a long time, it could even slowly change the body. Ling grains were the most widely used and basic ingredient in Ling foods. Even normal Xiuzhe that did not know how to make Ling food could easily consume it. Many thoughts appeared in Zuomo's head. Little Mountain Jia's Ling energy had become thin after the Yao army had passed through. Without a doubt, it was the fault of the Yao army. However, even though he knew this desolation was caused by the Yao army, Zuomo had to sigh with amazement at the strength of the Yao army. Little Mountain Jia might be a small Jia, but to be able to change the Ling energy of a Jia, this power was enough to make him look up with reverence. Other than admiration, he started to think of the related problems this matter would cause. Long ago when he had been farming ling grains, due to listening to the sound tablet frequently, he gradually learned how to follow the threads through the complex and numerous news reports to find the useful information. He knew he was only a little character. If he was going to survive in this troubled world, he needed to learn how to avoid dangers. If the situation worsened, Little Mountain Jie would become a place like Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. A place with no Ling energy was a terrible place for Xiuzha, and Little Mountain Jie would quickly become the playground of the Yaoma. Zuo didn't know what the Yaoma had done, nor did he know if the change of Ling energy could be reversed. If this change could be reversed, that would be good, but if it could not be, then the situation of the Xiuzha would be terrible. Under an environment without any Ling energy, the offensive power of the Xiuzha would dramatically lessen, and the Yaoma would become fish in the water. If this became the case, the disadvantages of the Xiuzha would continuously increase. The Yaoma would only need to corrode one Jia at a time, and the Xiuzha had to retreat. Damn it! Zuo felt his heartbeat was increasing. Alright, he was worrying for nothing. Those large sects wouldn't stand aside. Thousands of years ago, the Xiuzha had won over the Yaoma. They could do it again this time. Zuo comforted himself so. His thoughts turned back to himself. The great affairs of the world were nothing to him. It was more practical to focus more his efforts on his little life. The price of Ling plant farmers was going to grow. At least, he didn't have to worry about starving. This thought flashed through his head. The order of Little Mountain Jie would completely collapse. He had to quickly leave this place. He had deeply experienced the ineffectiveness of individual strength on the front lines of battle. He couldn't affect the battle, he couldn't even decide his own life. In troubled times, lives were nothing. Ma Fan's heart was fearful. The zombie elder had become silent. He felt the air in front of him had solidified, an invisible pressure making him tremble. He could clearly hear the increasing rate of his heartbeat. His mouth was drying. Why don't you all leave Little Mountain Jie? The zombie elder suddenly asked. Zuo finally spoke, and Ma Fan no longer felt he was suffocating. Elder, it's not that we do not want to leave Little Mountain Jie, but the Jie River towards Sky Water Jie has been under someone's control. If we want to pass, we needed to pay enough Jingshi and Ling grains. Zuo instantly realized. He couldn't help but think that these people were much more vicious than he was. Little Mountain Jie only had two Jie rivers, one to Sky Moon Jie, one towards Sky Water Jie. Blockading the Jie River towards Sky Water Jie, Little Mountain Jie instantly became a dead end. No one would dare to go to Sky Moon Jie. No one has tried to kill their way out. Ma Fan grimaced. Controlling the Sky Water Jie River is the strongest sect in the Jie, Clear Sky sect. Hearing this, Zuo shook his head. This wasn't the way to do business. To do business, there was a relationship of mutual gain. What was traded was Jingshi, but what this Clear Sky sect wanted was lives. Half of the responsibility for the collapse of order in Little Mountain Jie could be blamed on Clear Sky sect and what they were pushing from the shadows. The Xiuzha that could not escape Little Mountain Jie and could only continuously fight and steal both Jingshi and Ling grains from other people. Everyone would think that when they had stolen enough, they could escape this place. As for the people remaining, there was only one outcome. Zuo didn't feel anything guilt about profiteering from war, but what Clear Sky sect had done was enough for him to feel cold. Clear Sky sect's actions of pushing people to the edge of death was like playing with fire. If they were not careful, they could also fall in. However, from the outside, it was also possible to see their absolute confidence. Of course, Zuo was not so carefree as to worry about the life and death of other people. Clear Sky sect was blockading the Jie River, and so was stopping their road to leave Little Mountain Jie. Would Clear Sky sect allow him to leave? Not possible. Clear Sky sect had no relationship with him. Would they let go of the chance to get rich? As to making it through by force? That was even more unlikely. Gong Sun Cha might have been very relaxed in directing the golden armor guards to sort out the 10 or so Shouja, but the power that large sects like Clear Sky sect had was not something so few people that they had could face. Give Jingshi. Zhuo did have Jingshi, but he felt that in other people's eyes, he was definitely a fat sheep. If it was him who saw such a fat sheep, there was no reason not to squeeze everything he could. How could they be content with just Jingshi? Zhuo quickly vetoed that plan. Then, there was only one remaining way, kill his way through them. If he was going to kill, it wasn't possible with just the 3 of them. Then, he needed to expand the strength he had. He needed a power that the other could not dismiss. Clear Sky sect definitely would not get in a conflict with him to the point both sides were wounded and suffered significant losses. It was very simple. Zhuo had nothing, but Clear Sky sect was waiting and raking in Jingshi. Ma Fan would never think that his few words had caused so many thoughts to flash through Zhuo's mind. Zhuo asked for some of the general information regarding Sky Water Jie River. As expected, the Sky Water Jie River was unable to be penetrated under Clear Sky sect's management. It also killed off his last hope. Originally, he had thought about passing under the water of the Jie River by the Date Siege ship. Zhuo was going to ask Gongsun Shidi's opinion, but when he saw Gongsun Shidi's excitement and fanaticism, he already knew the answer. This extreme militant. Muttering inside, he found Pu Yao. Is there a way to make them listen to me? Pu Yao's bloody pupil flashed and he snickered, there's very many. What you Shouja use the most is Jinji. Jinji? Zhuo asked curiously. This isn't strange. Pu Yao said. This is mostly used on Xiu slaves, but some strict sects would use them on their disciples to stop the disciples from betraying them. So scary. Zhuo shook. He could not imagine that he needed to be implanted with Jinji when he entered a sect. Do you want that method? Yes. Zhuo only hesitated for a beat before deciding to take it. If it wasn't their death, it was his, there was nothing to say. First, get past the Jie River. Jinji were not moral, but it was the most effective method right now. There was no time for him to waste. Zhuo didn't want to be still in Little Mountain Jie when the Yao army returned. Pu Yao was strangely brisk this time, teaching Zhuo several kinds of Jinji. It was not that easy to use Jinji, especially to Zhuo who was only first stratum Ningmai. He spent some effort before he barely managed to learn it. This was due to his exceptional consciousness. Otherwise, Jinji were not something he could use. The pitiful Ma Fan became the first experiment. Just as Zhuo was trying his best to put down Jinji on the unconscious Shouja, Pu Yao revealed an amused expression in the sea of consciousness. You must also have great anticipation. His chin was propped up in his hand, his eerie bloody eye deep as a bloody sea, as he lightly said to the gravestone. So practical. Really makes one admire him more and more. He is destined not to walk your path, you stupid self-destructive fucker. The gravestone was silent and motionless. When the last Jinji was put in, Zhuo was exhausted. He put Jinji in all the Ningmai. In total, there were 16 people. The remainder is all down to you. Finishing, Zhuo, whose consciousness and Ling power had all been used up, instantly took a piece of Jingshi and entered meditation. No problem. Gongsun Cha raised his handsome and feminine face, smiling and revealing his teeth. An excited light was in his eyes. At the side, Ma Fan felt a burst of coldness start at his tailbone and climb up his spine. Sky Moon Jia, Desolate Wood Reef. Miss, Yan Yu of the 13th Corps has already reached the Jie River towards Bright Wave. The Jin Bao Zheng of the 6th Corps has reached the Jie River to South Beauty Jie. On the road, the two troops have not found any suspicious targets. The middle-aged man respectfully reported. They've moved pretty quickly. Mu Shi said faintly. The net has already been cast. The remainder is to slowly search. Be more attentive. Yes. The middle-aged person sternly responded. He hesitated, and then said, "Miss, we've found signs of MO activity." MO? At the side, Yan Feng's expression changed slightly, and he shouted. Mu Shi's gaze slightly narrowed. She raised her head to ask, "Have they determined who it is?" To be able to go through the blood Jia cracks, it can only be MO under Brigadier. The shock on Yan Feng's face did not disappear. Which Moon MO Colonel? Why did he come? Does he have the same goal as us? Why is it not possible? Mu Shi glanced at Yan Feng. You've missed a possibility. For example, a true MO brigadier that has sealed their own power. The face of the middle-aged person changed. Instantly make an investigation. Mu Shi said decisively. Even if he is a true MO brigadier, do not worry. It would be best to establish communication with him. Maybe he could help us. Yes, the middle-aged man accepted his orders. Seeing the worry on her subordinate's face, Mu Shi smiled. Don't worry too much, no matter if it is a Moon MO colonel, or a true MO brigadier, they have the same enemy as us. Mu Shi's features could only be called clean, but this smile seemed to have a special power to make others calm down. Miss is right, the middle-aged man said with a smile. Chapter 211 Trash and Poor Ghosts. Zhua Mo looked at the dozen or so unfamiliar faces in front of him. Some of the people were terrified, but more of them were rebellious. He was thinking about ways that he could control this group. Presently, Little Mountain Jia was like a cage, a gladiator stadium. The surviving Shouja were not average. From today onwards I am your boss, the big boss. Zhua Mo's opening did not stir any reaction. Scorn was in most people's eyes. Zhua Mo had just a one-stratum Ningmai cultivation. In front of these people, he didn't have any qualities that he could be proud about. Zhua Mo didn't pay any mind to this, and kept on speaking. I believe you have all had a taste of the Jinji. I don't want to spend more time talking. My goal is very simple, to go through the Jie River. As for you trash and poor ghosts, you have nothing to be squeezed out, so I don't have much interest in you. The words were nasty to hear, but many people's wariness lowered. The expressionless person in front of them did have the qualification to say this. That date seed ship was clearly a rare Jingshire talismans, a row of 7 cinnabar pattern blue spikes as sharp as teeth, clearly from an crocodile maw. They could smell faint traces of blood from the teeth. The long and elegant body of the ship was surrounded by a Ling shield that occasionally flashed with lightning as it wrapped tightly around the ship. Each person couldn't help but drool when they saw the grand talismans and flying swords the 3 golden armor guards were wearing. If it wasn't that they had Jinji in their bodies, these people who have leapt at the opportunity regardless of the risk. Even the richest person in the group was too embarrassed to open his 100 treasures pouch when facing such a grand scene. I hope everyone can have happy interactions. Of course, with your present skill level is hard to make me happy. Zhua Mo was full of scorn and disdain. Look at all of you fighting so messily, even worse than wandering bandits, no finesse at all. From today onwards you all have to remember one thing. Gang fighting requires high finesse and is skilled work. You are all very lucky. Zhua Mo pointed at Gongsun Cha beside him. Mr. Gongsun here, is the best and most famous battle general of Sky Moon Jie. He will personally teach you this profound skill. Gongsun Cha smiled shyly, but his face didn't blush at all. Chen Yuqing gaped. This boast was somewhat. When the other people's eyes landed on Gongsun Cha, all the scorn and disdain completely flew away, only leaving behind terror. Very good, Zhua Mo was extremely content. It seemed that Gongsun Shidi had already established enough authority with these people. Just like when one did business, after pushing for the lowest price, he needed to give the other an incentive to motivate the other person. You will be completely transformed, and you will begin a completely different life here. You do not need to worry about ambushes in the middle of the night, you do not need to think about where to escape for safety. Zhua Mo waved his arms, you don't need to worry about anything. The only worry you need to have is whether or not you can satisfy Mr. Gongsun. Zuemo made the last conclusion in an unconcerned tone. The Jie River will fall under our feet. Zuemo, feeling very good about himself, moved the group to the side as he and Gongsun Cha started to discuss. How long would it take to train these people to have offensive power? Zuemo asked Gongsun Cha. Don't know, Gongsun Cha spread his hands, we are all novices. Zuemo had a headache. Gongsun Shidi was right. Everyone here were novices, no one had any experience. Gongsun Cha added, according to the rules of the wargame, a new troop needs to be trained for over a year to form the most basic offensive maneuvers. Also, the wargames you made were all Yama style, not Shouja, so I have to slowly experiment. We don't have that much time, Zuemo shook his head. He didn't believe the Yaoma would give them a year. Gongsun Cha thought for a moment, then we can only increase the intensity of the training, or there are ways that we can use numbers to make up for lack of power. Numbers, it seems that we need a temporary base, Zuemo said solemnly. Zuemo chose a mountain valley. Before, there was a little sect here, but the people had left, so the valley did not belong to anyone. The reason he chose this place was because there were Ling veins here before. The reason that the Ling energy of Little Mountain Jia had become thin was definitely due to a problem with the Ling veins. Zuemo wanted to personally see what the Ling veins had become. They had encountered several groups along the way, which they completely taken down. At the beginning, it was the Golden Armor Guards. Later, Gongsun Cha commanded the Shouja they had just imprisoned. Compared to the high efficiency of the 3 Golden Armor Guards, these Ningmai Shouja of average strength were extremely inefficient. The novice Gongsun Cha also made many mistakes, but he was not discouraged. Zuemo knew that it couldn't be rushed, so he slowed down. In any case, there was still the Golden Armor Guards and the Date Siege ship in reserve. He didn't need to worry about the problem of safety. It was hard to find the chance for battle. If he didn't use it, it was really a waste. Gongsun Cha quickly displayed his talent as a commander. Going from the complete chaos at the beginning to a full-fledged organization, took only a span of 10 days. Over the span of more than 10 days, the troop had quickly expanded to 40 people. 28 Ningmai, 12 Zhuji. Zuemo quickly discovered that setting down Jinji was not harmless. Each Jinji required him to put a bit of his consciousness inside the body of the other. Each Jinji Zuemo set would weaken his consciousness. This was not something that could be avoided. There were no free meals in this world. It was only a weirdo like him that could even set Jinji before he reached Jindan. Luckily, they did not meet large groups of Shouja on the road. According to Ma Fan, there were countless little groups in Little Mountain Jia, and several that were several hundred strong. Zuemo found it strange why the larger groups did not attack the Jia River. Later, he found out the Clear Sky sect that guarded the Jia River was supported by a Jindan. Zuemo was frightened. No wonder the Clear Sky sect had the confidence to monopolize the Jia River. They had a Jindan at their back. This information instantly made Zuemos reconsider the difficulty of breaking through the Jia River. Ningmai had 3 strata. The most important difference was the difference in the amount of Ling power inside the body. The peak of the first stratum, Ling power was about 10 Jing. The peak of the second stratum was approximately 30 Jing, and the peak of the third stratum would shoot up to 90 Jing. Of the 28 Ningmai subordinates that Zuemo had, only 3 had reached the second stratum. The remainder were all first stratum Ningmai. Usually, a Ningmai third stratum called individually deal with 10 first stratum Ningmai, or 3 second stratum Ningmai. Of course, this was in theory. Real life was more complex, when taking into account spells, flying swords, talismans, and offensive tactics. But if a Ningmai faced a Jindan, they could only escape. What counterattack? Winning by pitting the weak against the strong, it definitely could not appear. The difference between Jindan and Ningmai was not just the difference in Ling power, but also the difference in understanding Ling power. During the process of entering Jindan, Shouja would experience a deeper comprehension of the world and Ling power. The same spell before and after Jindan would be drastically different in power. The only way that Ningmai could face Jindan was to overwhelm them with numbers. As to how many people were needed for victory, both Sua Mo and Gongsun Cha didn't know. Sua Mo could only ask Pu Yao. Gang fighting? That isn't easy to say. Pu Yao rubbed his chin. It depends on the skill of the other side, their talisman, and the cooperation of your side. If it was those Yao soldiers? Sua Mo asked. If it's a normal Jindan, then a troop of 100 night stock Yao. If the quality of the commander is not too bad, there shouldn't be a problem, Pu Yao mused. Sua Mo released a breath. Good, at least it wasn't completely hopeless. He naturally knew that the group of people he had could not reach the skill level of the Yao army, but he could expand in numbers. If 100 people did not work, then 200, 300. What he was most worried about was that even numbers would not be enough to make up for the difference. Why is the Ling energy of Little Mountain Jia becoming thin? Sua Mo asked Pu Yao. There are many possibilities, like Yao worms that eat Ling or black line mushrooms. Eating Ling is a characteristic of Yao Ma. Is there a way to reverse it? You can request someone that is at least Yuanying to act, and wait 10 years for recovery. Yuanying, Sua Mo was speechless. The strongest Xiuzha that he had encountered up until now was in Jindan. To renew the Ling veins, it actually needed Yuanying. That was a death sentence. Something only someone in Yuanying could accomplish, Sua Mo didn't feel he had any chance of success. However, he still decided to establish his base in this mountain valley. The environment around it was good. Sua Mo received a large number of Yama military training methods from Pu Yao and dumped them on Gongsun Cha. Pu Yao was actually kind enough to remind Sua Mo those were old antiques from thousands of years ago, and they should only be used as a reference. Sua Mo was unused to Pu Yao's sudden change in attitude. But when Pu Yao drew out the earth energy, Sua Mo, who had become unfamiliar after a period of time, instantly experienced what was life worse than death. Even though he knew it was beneficial for his body, he still wanted to cry. Drawing out the earth energy, when would it end? Ma Fan nervously stood in front of Gongsun Cha. In his eyes, the delicate and shy young master's deviousness was enough for any Yao Ma to die of humiliation. No one dared to disobey his commands. Even the most vicious and rebellious of them all, Lei Peng, was as docile as a kitten in front of him. Perform every skill you know once. Do not leave anything out. Gongsun Cha's order was not complicated. Yes, Ma Fan slowly learned how to live under Gongsun Cha's command. It was very simple. What Gongsun Cha said, then he would do it. If he managed to complete the demand, then everything was wonderful. Ma Fan started to perform his spells one by one. Luckily, he had no sect or family. He only knew so many spells and quickly finished performing. Gongsun Cha was very interested in his illusory movement method and the 3 sword moves, and had made him repeat them several times. Ma Fan had been very worried. What if Big Boss wanted his sword scripture, and wanted him to give it up? However, he quickly found his worry was unwarranted. After Gongsun Cha recorded it down, he was sent back to training. On the second day, Ma Fan trembled as he took a jade scroll the smiling Gongsun Cha handed him. After just one look, his little face was the color of dirt. Chapter 212 Gu is pragmatic. Pu Yao felt this was extremely amusing. Truthfully, he had been in Zhuo Mo's sea of consciousness for this long, and there hadn't been one thing that was amusing as what was happening right now. In the thousands of years he lived, he had not encountered something more amusing than this. A Zhuji Xiuzha who had never studied anything in the area, he was also a butcher, had started to study how to become a battle general. He had never heard of something like this, even during the Great War from thousands of years ago. He was very familiar with battle generals. In the camp of Xiuzha, without almost any exception, there were 2 ways that battle generals were trained. The first was a battle general that was specifically nurtured by large sects, and the other were battle generals that underwent countless battles and had gradually comprehended the skills. The majority were from the first method. In that 1,000-year war, almost 70% of the famous battle generals in the Shosha camp had been from the large sections. They learned all kinds of knowledge from when they were young. Even the spells they learned were specialized to command in battle. The second kind was the other 30%. In reality, if one considered all battle generals and not only the famous generals, the difference would be larger. Not having been taught from birth and having to climb up step by step from the lowest level, battle generals formed by the second method were all geniuses. The price they paid were much higher than the first kind. It looked as though that Gongsun Cha had great hope to become one of those. Yet reality was always cruel. Being of low status and wanting to become a battle general, these individuals had to meet one condition: having great individual power. Disregarding the talent to command, the battle generals that were the second kind had talent in cultivation that was comparable to any other shoja. The reason was very simple. If they had no strength, they would not survive through battle. If they couldn't survive, how could they climb up? Wanting to become a battle general but being of low status, they had to repeatedly climb over mountains of corpses, in order to accumulate fame and experience. Then there would be compliance to his orders. No one in little groups of 7 or 8 would be willing to put their lives in the hands of an individual that could die anytime, much less larger troops. This was also why Pu Yao thought that Gongsun Cha hadn't had a chance. Gongsun Cha was only a butcher, a zhuji butcher. Pu Yao could easily see that Gongsun Cha's talent in cultivation was very average. Even if he had many lingdan and talismans, he wouldn't accomplish too much in cultivation. But Pu Yao did not immediately dismiss his ability to become a battle general, even if he had to learn on his own. The most important reason was Zhuo Mo's support. His talent wasn't in question. If Gongsun Cha had been in a large sect from birth, and he ultimately became a battle general, Pu Yao would not find it strange. After playing war chess for so many days, Gongsun Cha had improved quickly. What really surprised him was that Zhuo Mo trusted Gongsun Cha so much. Even Pu Yao had to admit that Zhuo Mo's eyes were wondrously accurate. In his mind, Zhuo Mo's talent wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't the best. However, over these 2 years, even with the stumbling and tripping, Pu Yao found to his shock that Zhuo Mo's progress was far outside of his predictions. Part of it was that he had been involved, but the speed of improvement of core disciples from large sects would rarely reach Zhuo Mo's level, and they would receive more aid than Zhuo Mo. But Zhuo Mo's physical talent really could not be called great. This was what Pu Yao marveled at. As he kept on thinking about it, Pu Yao felt that it was all caused by Zhuo Mo's viewpoint. Zhuo Mo's viewpoint and mentality were very strange, and very different from normal people. No matter if it was cultivation, battle, or interpersonal relationships. It was easy for others to see him as the classical utilitarian. Clever, greedy, and money-grubbing, but he would sometimes do something that Pu Yao would find stupid and irrational. Yet these idiotic actions would usually produce good results. Originally, Pu Yao did not have a good opinion of Gongsun Cha's prospects, but considering Zhuo Mo, he was suddenly filled with interest and anticipation. It was so amusing. Compared to Pu Yao's attitude of idling and watching from the sidelines, Zhuo Mo was so busy his feet never touched the ground. He had been nagged by Chen Yuqing to the point that he had to build a beast pool. They wouldn't stay for very long in Little Mountain Jia, but it wouldn't be too short. If they used the time well, they could produce a few batches of ling beasts. Chen Yuqing had been studying for a long time on the date seed ship, and he had many ideas. However, without the beast pool, all ideas were nothing. Shi Xiang, build a beast pool. Chen Yucheng's words were like a ghost haunting Zhuo Mo's ears constantly. After repeated requests, Zhuo Mo complied. His wealth was large. A beast pool was expensive, but not too expensive. However, the work was not easy. No one could help him, especially when Chen Shidi had a pile of ideas he wanted to suggest. To realize these ideas, he needed to modify the beast pool. The modifications meant that the work he had to do increased dramatically. It meant that he needed to reconstruct it. Even more, Chen Yuqing Shidi's ideas would occasionally change. Each time Zhuo Mo wanted to slack off, Chen Yucheng's haunting voice would float to him again. Shi Xiang, just change a bit, just change a bit. When the beast pool was finished, it was like there was a pin in Zhuo Mo's behind. He ran away as far as possible. When an obedient person started to torture other people, it would make them feel hopeless. Chen Yuqing Shidi began to work on the beast pool, Gong Sun Shidi was working on the group of Xiuzha, and Zhuo Mo started to work on himself. His studies into formations needed a large amount of time. He also added another job for himself. He found the Ling vein, and gathered some of the black line mushrooms that ate Ling. He was very interested in them. Other than that, cultivation was something that could not be missed. His consciousness had shrunk dramatically after setting down the Jinji. Thinking about the tactic of battle by relying on numbers, he deeply felt that increasing his consciousness was his most important priority at the moment. Embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation became something he needed to do every day. After his consciousness manifested, his sea of consciousness transformed. The enchanting flames in the sea of consciousness had disappeared. The number of stars in the sky had increased to 10. The sword river still was the same. He had not increased his sword essence. Looking at the stars in the sea of consciousness, Zhuo Mo suddenly recalled the time that he forged Lil Pagoda, and the stardust that the stars had produced which continuously permeated his consciousness. In the void above his consciousness, the 10 stars hung. Other than the one star that was somewhat bright, the rest were dim. Thinking about the speed that the stars sprayed out stardust, Zhuo Mo felt it would take years for the stardust to permeate all of his consciousness. That is star source. Pu Yao sat on the gravestone and raised his head to look at the 10 stars above his head. What is star source? This question had always been buried in Zhuo Mo's mind. Seeing that Pu Yao seemed to have intentions of explaining today, he played along and asked. Star source is the origin of the spiritual power, Pu Yao slowly said. You can also think of them as the crystals formed from Ling power. Don't you Xiuzha like to talk about how many Jing of Ling power? 10 star spiritual power. Zhuo Mo asked in response. Or you can see them as the springs that birth spiritual power. 10 stars mean that you have 10 springs that can produce spiritual power. One time, I saw that these stars could spray out silver star dust. What is that? Zhuo Mo couldn't help but ask in curiosity. What did you say? Pu Yao suddenly opened his bloody pupil, his spine straightening, changing from his lazy attitude. Zhuo Mo feels slightly terrified under Pu Yao's bloody gaze. Inside, he wondered if the other had started to go crazy again. Is something wrong? Zhuo Mo weakly asked. After a beat, he saw Pu Yao say dazedly, the second consciousness. He forcefully shook his head as he refocused. He looked deeply at Zhuo Mo. The stardust that you saw is a purer form of spiritual power. We usually call it spirit dust. These 10 stars, bright and dull, are different. The brightest star can produce the most star spirit dust. The speed that it produces spiritual power is the fastest. Zhuo Mo didn't really understand. Pu Yao didn't attend to him, and kept on talking. What Yao cultivate are the laws of the world. All objects in the world all contain the laws of the world. All objects in the world can cultivate their spirit. Stars are just one of them. The path of the stars is profound and cryptic. There are very few Yao that walk the path of star spirit cultivation. Hearing this, Zhuo Mo suddenly had a slightly bad premonition. What spirit cultivation are you? What I chose is sky fire spirit cultivation. Pu Yao smiled, his teeth showing. Zhuo Mo interjected, then why am I star spiritual cultivation? Because what you cultivate is embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, Pu Yao snickered. I hadn't thought that this embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation is actually a star spirit cultivation. I was fooled by the name. He muttered in a small voice, I had expected it was trash, hadn't thought that it was actually high level, such a loss, and fire suddenly shot up from Zhuo Mo's heart. He was enraged, pointing at Pu Yao's nose as he swore. You trash, you gave something you hadn't tested for Yi to cultivate. You actually wanted to use trash to con Yi, Yi isn't finished with you, don't be like this. Pu Yao wasn't angry, and said, chuckling, in any case, you didn't lose. Look, you even managed to cultivate to 10 stars. In 2 years, you've gotten to manifestation. This speed is very fast. You, Zhuo Mo pointed, hearing Pu Yao's heartless words became so angry his finger trembled. Do you want to know how to cultivate next? Seeing the situation, Pu Yao crisply turned to temptation. Yes, Zhuo Mo did not hesitate in answering, all his anger flying away. Pu Yao was not shocked in the slightest by Zhuo Mo's 180-degree turn in attitude. This guy was very pragmatic. That's right. Pu Yao smiled. I can tell you, and I can give you even more help. But I have a small request. Say it. Zhuo Mo was very familiar with Pu Yao's conduct as well. I want the golden core of the Jin Dan of Clear Sky sect. Zhuo Mo was dumbstruck. When he managed to respond, he instantly jumped up. Are you crazy? Jin Dan. Go get it yourself if you want it. Run to a little Ningmai like myself to say you want the golden core of a Jin Dan, humph, the other can turn me to dust with one slap. Finishing, he turned and left, waving his hand. If you want to play, play by yourself, Ji won't play with you. Pu Yao's expression was calm, and not angry, add a 5th grade sword scripture. Zhuo Mo pretended not to hear, and continued to walk forward. Add a 5th grade movement method. Zhuo Mo was not moved at all, his steps not changing. I'll make 7 more golden armor guards for you. Zhuo Mo decided to ignore him. And another move of, little 1,000-leaf hands. Zhuo Mo instantly stopped his body, and turned to walk towards Pu Yao. What to do? Chapter 213 Ma Fan reaching target. Ma Fan felt very troubled. No matter if it was his Ningmai second stratum cultivation or the nameless scripture he cultivated, they made him one of the top practitioners in this group. But to someone as afraid of trouble as he was, this prestige wasn't a good thing. He became one of the important prospects to be nurtured. The requirements for his training far surpassed everyone else's. Everyone looked at him with gazes full of sympathy. That's right, it really was sympathy. The training for everyone was extremely strict, so the training regime of an important prospect, Ma Fan's, could only be imagined. However, other than sympathy, they did not feel any joy at his misfortunes. They didn't even have the power to save themselves. Everyone in the camp put all their strength into furiously training. If they did not complete their training, their outcome would be extremely tragic. On the first day several people did not obey. But now when everyone saw the somewhat feminine, delicate, and shy youth, they could not control the deep terror that came out of their heart. The terrified screams that meant a fate worse than death haunted their ears. The inhuman state of the people who didn't listen frequently haunted their thoughts. Whenever they thought of it, these people that were used to seeing storms of blood couldn't help but tremble. Devious, vicious, and cold-blooded, he thought of a life like grass. These words were not enough to describe this seemingly harmless and beautiful youth in front of them. Even the most rebellious person was docile and obedient in front of him. This handsome youth might be strict, but if you could successfully finish your training nothing would happen. He would never try to punish you for unsubstantiated reasons. He didn't take your talismans or scriptures. After discovering this point, everyone competed to be first, afraid of being slow, and having to taste that terrible torture that was worse than death. Ma Fan felt his life was hopeless. Each day was endless training. Heavens! How can this be completed? It hadn't been long since he had broken through to the second stratum of Ningmai. The Ling power in his body was around 15 Jing. The content of his training focused on only one thing, one of his sword moves. That's right, just the one move. Of the 3 sword moves that he knew, the strongest was the illusory shadowless sword of destruction. The power of this move was very high. Most important was that it did not cause Ling power ripples when it was cast. Without a sound or wind, it never attracted the eye, but it was surprisingly powerful. In reality, after learning it, he had only used it in combat 2 or 3 times before now. He usually was afraid of trouble, and rarely engaged in combat. If he saw the situation was not right, he would quickly use the illusory movement method to escape. His training content was just this move. However, it wasn't so simple. Gong Sun Cha had 2 demands. The first was that he could use this killing move when he was using the illusory movement method. The second was that he had to be able to cast this move 3 times or more in the span of 15 minutes. And in 1 hour, he had to be able to use this move 7 or more times. When he first received the training regime, it was normal for his face to be ugly. With his present cultivation, if he cast illusory shadowless sword of destruction, he couldn't do it when he was in motion, and could only cast it 4 times. After casting it, he needed to rest for a while before casting again. This clearly short of Gong Sun Cha's demands. Ma Fan didn't know how Gong Sun Cha had thought of such a fatal demand. Wasn't it just asking for his life? He had once gathered his courage to request Gong Sun Cha to change it. What he received was Gong Sun Cha's light words, "Cultivate well, for putting your life on the line is better than losing it." When Ma Fan heard this, and his heart instantly became cold. With no other solution, he could only train with his life on the line. From the time he had started his cultivation, he had never cultivated so hard before. Using the illusory movement method at the same time as the illusory shadowless sword of destruction, this was something that he had never thought of before. With no sect, to be able to become a Ningmai second stratum, Ma Fan's talent in cultivation was not low, and his intelligence was not bad. Of course even he could see that if he could use his movement method and sword move at the same time, the power of the move would increase greatly. But with his personality of avoiding trouble, if he thought of this in the past, he would have gave up after trying a few times. But now, the blade hung above his neck. If he retreated slightly, his little life would be gone. There was no room to change his current trajectory. He could only push forward. His Ling power was so expended that he almost spat blood, his body was sore and soft that it felt like his skeleton was coming apart. For the sake of his little life, he must cultivate. 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 He had cultivated to the point that he wanted to throw up when he saw a flying sword. He actually succeeded. A flickering figure fluttered uncertainly in the air, and without warning, several explosions suddenly occurred in the air. Boom! The ground 50 zhang away from him seemed to have been struck by something invisible, suddenly exploding open, sending dirt flying. The people who had been training nearby were alarmed, and put out their Ling shields. Pia pia pia, the flying dirt hit the Ling shields like rain. Those with weaker cultivation even felt their Ling shields shake. Everyone was shocked. When they looked at the ground, they saw 7 deep holes in a row, each hole that was 2 zhang deep. Crashing down through the air, yet still so powerful, if this was someone's body. Their eyes as they looked at Ma Fan instantly changed. This guy definitely had been holding back before. However, some with nimbler minds had happy expressions. Right now, everyone was on the same rope. Ma Fan getting stronger was good for all of them. At least, the probability of keeping their lives was now higher. Gong Sun Cha also had a surprised expression. He hadn't thought that Ma Fan would be the first to achieve his demands. In his plan, Ma Fan was the primary attacker, or rather, it was better to say he was the ambusher. With the unpredictable illusory movement method, and the undetectable but powerful, illusory shadowless sword of destruction, that could kill with one blow, wasn't he born for ambushing? It was a pity that while the illusory body movement method was hard to follow, but it was easy for people to guard against, lowering the abruptness of an ambush. If there was a movement method that could completely conceal him, then Ma Fan's power would be even greater. Gong Sun Cha felt he needed to think thoroughly about how to use Ma Fan to his greatest potential. He may look confident and calm in front of these shouja, but in reality, his mind had been tense from the beginning. He was a beginner, and had not been trained. Zhuo Shixiang trusted him, so Shixiang certainly wouldn't blame him for making mistakes in the beginning. However, though Gongsun Cha might look soft, he was actually very proud. Would he permit himself to make mistakes at such an important time? All of his days were spent on these shouja. He had long stopped his own cultivation. He disliked failure. Ma Fan looked in disbelief at the 7 deep holes in front of him on the ground, his mind blank. He did it, he really did it. Was this really something he had done? Dazedly landing on the ground, his mind was wandering. He had never thought that he could really do it. He gritted his teeth and persisted in training because he was forced to, but when he really met the goals which he never could have possibly conceived of before, a different emotion filled his heart. Looking at the flying sword in his hand, a seed called confidence gradually sprouted in his heart. Right now, do not create new stars. You cannot bite off more than you can chew. You should spend more time to temper these 10 stars, so they will be as bright as your brightest star. The stars are the source of your spiritual power, and the brighter they are, the more spiritual power they produce, especially stardust. The brighter the star, the more pure the star dust they spray out. This alone will be more beneficial to you. In meditation, Zhuo Mo's mind had retreated to his sea of consciousness. He sat cross-legged facing the stars, an ethereal strand of star light dropping from one of the stars and entering Zhuo Mo's forehead. As Zhuo Mo breathed, the star light brightened and dimmed pleasantly. Bathing in the star light, Zhuo Mo channeled the spell and communicated with the star. Communicating with the star was the first step in tempering it. After this, Zhuo Mo needed to find a star home, take in star power, and then use it to nurture the stars in his consciousness to increase the star source. This time, Pu Yao's teachings were extremely detailed, answering all his questions patiently. He also didn't drag his heels on what he had promised Zhuo Mo, and paid up front. After communicating with the star in his sea of consciousness, Zhuo Mo stopped his cultivation. Absorbing star power had to be done at night. He spent some time on reading through the good things he had gotten from Pu Yao before he started to think. The stage of Jindan was a stage that every shouja dreamed about that time. At that time, the ling power of the shouja would form into a golden core, hence the name. The golden core was the best parts of the ling power of a shouja. Even the source of their life was inside it. A shouja that lost their golden core would die. In other words, to obtain the golden core of a Jindan, one had to kill them. Kill a Jindan. That really was a crazy idea. But behind this crazy idea, Zhuo Mo had his own considerations. He would definitely have a battle with Clear Sky Sect. This Jindan was an enemy he would have to meet. Zhuo Mo didn't have any thought of being so lucky as to avoid it. To pass through the Jie River, they had to defeat this Jindan. That was the lowest goal. Right now, it was just increasing from defeating a Jindan to killing a Jindan. It sounded shocking, but in reality, there wasn't much of an increase. After a Jindan was defeated, they would definitely flee. It was better to kill them. If the other escaped, they would never face him directly again. It wouldn't be difficult for the Jindan to wait in the shadows to kill him. If the other went to invite a few of his Jindan friends, then this little Zhuo Mo would definitely die. Taking a few hundred people to scheme against a Jindan, Zhuo Mo felt that he had a slightly probability of victory. But if it was 2 Jindan, Zhuo Mo guessed he wouldn't even be able to escape. Thinking about it now, no matter if he agreed to Pu Yao's demands or not, he definitely could not let Clear Sky Sect's Jindan live. Zhuo Mo's heart was scared. It was lucky that he had agreed to Pu Yao's request. Otherwise, if he had let the other go after the battle, he would have caused himself many problems. After thinking it through, the rock in Zhuo Mo's heart instantly landed. People were like this. If they heard the great reputation of the other, it was easy to be intimidated and scared. However, once they understood that there was no other path, even against a god, they would take off a few pieces of flesh. The effect that Zhuo Mo's personal power could have in this battle was pitifully small. It wasn't even as high as the 3 golden armor guards. Luckily, he was never a person that relied on brute power to eat. He had a daring idea. Chapter 214 A Mountain of Problems. The art of multiple people fighting less, that was gang fighting. Gang fighting, that was fighting in groups. In Zhuo Mo's understanding, it was ridiculous to depend on a person that had been only studying Ling grains 2 years ago to study battle tactics. However, if it was about gang fighting, he still had some real experience. There were many disciples in the outer sect, of course, there were those that were bullies. Adding on that the little factions were like trees in a forest, while fights didn't happen every day, there would be an occasional one. Having seen many gang fights, the winning side always had certain qualities. First, more people was better. This was the most basic tenet of gang fighting. Gang fighting, if there weren't enough people, it would be embarrassing to call it a gang. More people won over fewer people, that was the most common outcome. The second was bravery and viciousness. Bravery was not being afraid. The other side had more people, but their side dared to put their life on the line. The people who were not afraid of putting everything into a fight dominated everything around them. Other people didn't dare to get close. Even experts wanted to stay alive. As to viciousness, it meant being unconditional in attacking. Once an attack started, one could not attend to their own back and be timid, the blow coming from the vicious had to reach rock bottom. After flipping over several people, the other side would be discouraged. Next was cooperation. The essence of group fighting was using more people fighting fewer people. Then how could the smaller group win? That required cooperation. A group of cooperative people defeating disordered rabble 3 times their number was very normal occurrence. The last was that the weapons were appropriate. Look at Ling Ying's sect, they were the epitome of this. However, even the best talismans and flying swords depended on the people using it. Idiots with talismans were still idiots. After concluding all this, Zhuo Mo's thoughts became nimble. It took time to increase numbers, and it was a task that could not be hurried. Regarding bravery was vicious, Zhuo Mo felt that it was pretty hard to attain. This group of people would be very unwilling, and were only forced to follow due to his jinji. Cooperation could be considered, but this was Gong Sun Cha's problem. If he interfered, he might not have any positive benefit to the situation. What he could only work on weapons. He may have some talismans, but it wouldn't be better than what these people had searched for and schemed for themselves. He could only think about other objects. He actually did find something. Yin Fire Bead. The power of the Yin Fire Bead did not have to be said. He had never tried it on a Jindan, but there definitely was not a problem with people under Jindan. If one wasn't enough against Jindan, then 2. If that was still not enough, then everyone could throw them together. Each person throwing 8 or 10, surely even Jindan couldn't bear it. He thought uncertainly. However, he did feel that it was possible. In the past, he had always been worried that the matter of him knowing how to make yin beads would be revealed. Now that it was a matter of life or death, he threw those concerns to the back of his mind. If it spread, then there was a possibility of people targeting him, but that was a matter for the future. If he couldn't leave Little Mountain Jia, then there was no future. This idea made his mind jump. He inventoried the yin fire beads that he had, there were 10 or so. He shook his head, discontent with this number. For Ningmai, Zhuo Mo felt 10 was enough, but the other was Jindan. That was a Jindan. Just thinking about it, Zhuo Mo felt respect rise, and his desire for battle decreased. Other people may not know the strength of Jindan, but how could Zhuo Mo not know? He had suffered greatly under Xian Yen Shishu's hands and had a clear understanding of Jindan. If it was just him alone, Zhuo Mo definitely would not be able to wound Xian Yen Shishu even with things 10 times more powerful than yin fire beads. This was because he basically could not throw them and have them touch Xian Yen Shishu's body. But if it was gang fighting, Zuemo thought there was a small chance. In a battle, there would be many talismans and flying swords flying. Before the Yin fire bead was activated, it was not eye-catching. If the other was not on their guard, it was easy to get tricked. Zuemo brought this problem up with Pu Yao. Of all these people, only this guy had fought Jindan experts before. Your idea is somewhat interesting. Pu Yao had an interested expression. Seeing Pu Yao's expression, Zuemo knew that it had potential, but this requires Yin fire beads. Where can I get more Yin fire beads? You need to find a place with Yin fiends. Pu Yao didn't have a solution. Find someone familiar with the area and ask. Hearing Pu Yao say so, Zuemo knew that there was no place with Yin fiends nearby. Otherwise, with Pu Yao's abilities, he could have immediately pointed to the location. He could only go ask the Xiuzha of Little Mountain Jia and see if any one of them knew if there were places with Yin fiends. When he walked into the camp, he was shocked by the heated atmosphere. 20-something Ningmai cultivating together, the presence was shocking, his little heart beating rapidly. After a long while, he recovered. Seeing Gongsun Cha talking with Ma Fan in the corner, he hurriedly ran over. When he neared, he heard Gongsun Cha lecturing Ma Fan. Your pathing just now was not correct. You have to remember your role. You have no set location, so you cannot stop. You need to be more nimble. Understand? More nimble. Swimming between them, search for chances. You also need to notice to retract your presence. You need the enemy to not notice your existence, notice the opportunities. Do not deliberately search to kill with one move. You are the main attacker, yes, but you have fellows. They are not just decorations. At this time, your best chance is to attack. Yes, you cannot kill him, but he will reveal openings and will give your fellows opportunities. Other than killing enemies, you need to learn how to make opportunities for your fellows. If you decide to attack, don't do those unnecessary flourishes. You have to be more straightforward, use more force. One move, you only have the chance for one move. Zuemo had never seen Gongsun Cha so fierce. That's right, full of fierceness. This guy who usually looked shy and weak was bellowing a whole bunch of stuff out. Seeing Ma Fan's nervousness, not daring to miss a word, Zuemo's heart was suddenly full of sympathy. After the lecture, Gongsun Cha waved and indicated for Ma Fan to continue cultivating. Everyone is working hard. Zuemo said with feeling. Gongsun Cha nodded, and, when they can sell their lives, that will be almost enough. Ma Fan, who had been preparing to leave, staggered and almost fell. Zuemo mumbled in response, and asked uncertainly, do you need help? He had completely thrown everything on Gongsun Cha's shoulders. Even he was slightly ashamed. Seeing Gongsun Cha so busy his feet didn't really touch the ground, who would not feel a bit of shame. Gongsun Cha tilted his head to think and asked, can you make a kind of talisman? What talisman do you want? Speaking of talismans, Zuemo felt his bravery rise. These spectacular and eye-dazzling things in the camp, he could understand if they were by themselves, but he didn't understand when they were put together. But if it was about talismans, he was good at that. Zuemo completely forgot that he was also self-taught in forging talismans. In total, Xian Yen Shishu hadn't thought him that many times. Having just felt some shame, Zuemo instantly found a place he could express his value and make up for his deficiencies, his mind becoming alert. Oh, talismans like the necklace. Gongsun Cha took off the same heart necklace on his neck. Zuemo scratched his head. He understood what Gongsun Cha meant, to pass orders. Pu Yao had spoken about this problem with him. The Yao armies used the consciousness to pass on commands, the Mo armies used the Mo matrix to pass on commands, and Xiuzha used seals. The same heart necklace could connect the user to 6 of the fellows, which meant commanding 6 other people. Clearly, 6 people could not satisfy Gongsun Cha's demands. Zuemo agreed with that. Facing Jindan, it probably needed several hundred. How to direct all of them then? The battlefield changed every second. If they could not respond immediately, then there was only death. Zhuemo hadn't expected that he couldn't solve the problem of the Yin fiends, and instead found another problem out of his trip to the camp. However, he understood the importance of the matter could not be delayed. He immediately passed on the matter of the Yin fiend grounds to Gongsun Cha and rushed away with the same heart necklace. However, before he left, a batch of Jingshi and Ling grains was scraped off him. He had to rejoice now that Master had gotten large amounts of supplies for him when Wukong's sword sect had sent him to the desolate wood reef. They were used to great effect now. High-intensity training like this consumed enormous amounts of Jingshi and Ling grains. Zhuemo was doubtful if he could manage it if there were 100 or more people. However, this was not the time to think of it. The most pressing problem was what Gongsun Cha had thrown over. Large-scale group fighting. Shouja used seals to pass commands. If it was forging, Zhuemo dared to try, but if it was making seals, he could do nothing. However, Zhuemo was not a conservative person. This world would always have ways. Even more, he had a model on his hands. The effect of this same heart necklace was not any different than seals, but it was a talisman. Zhuemo started to think of how to replicate the same heart necklace. The number of people the same heart necklace could command was much lower, and could not reach Gongsun Cha's demands. However, he thought of a method. 7 people to a troop, the leader of the troop in command. The troop leader would wear 2 necklaces, one to direct the troop members, the other receiving orders from the rank above. That way, wouldn't everything be connected? Of course, the usability of this method had to wait for the objects to be made before it could be tested. The same heart necklace was an upper 4th grade talisman. Theoretically, it was beyond of Zhuemo's ability. But thinking that he had patted his chest just now, there was actually no one except him that could solve the problem. To be able to qualify as upper 4th grade, the forging skill of the same heart necklace was very high. There were more than 100 formations in the little necklace. These formations were either by themselves, or they were connected with others. That was the focus of Zhuemo's study. Only by familiarizing himself with these formations and chewing through all of them, he could understand how the same heart necklace could connect minds. Only by understanding the theory could he then copy it. This wasn't a small task. However, as it related to his wealth and little life, Zhuemo definitely wouldn't slack in the least. He would even eat this necklace if needed, much less just study it. All in. Chapter 215, Sustained Battle. Through battle he had lost again. Gongsun Cha looked at the devastated landscape, his remaining shreds of troops, and grimaced. He didn't remember how many times he had lost. The skill of the mysterious war chess opponent was extremely high. He didn't know anything about the mysterious opponent. He couldn't even find any traces of this mysterious person usually. But he knew, this mysterious person that he had never met really existed. Because the other would play war chess with him. Even though the other would use Zhuo Shixiang as a cover, the skill of the two individuals were so drastically different that Gongsun Cha could easily detect it. Gongsun Cha intelligently did not ask. It wasn't too hard for him to accept that the soul of an elder which had not extinguished was living inside Zhuo Shixiang's body. Thinking about Zhuo Shixiang's sudden rise in the last 2 years, it added some support for his speculation. However, the feeling of defeat was still terrible. He wasn't content. Even though he knew this was the normal and most rational outcome, and he was able to learn many things from each loss, but he just wasn't content. He disliked defeat, or it was more accurate to call it hate. This unwillingness flashed through his heart and was buried deep down. Anger was not useful. The war chess was different than real battles, but this was the only place right now where he could learn how to command. There was no room for him to pick and criticize. Also, that mysterious elder was clearly an expert at war chess. The wondrous tactics and the frightening offensive power. Each time the battle was at its fiercest, he would have a feeling that the person opposite him was a large man with a heavy and flaming hammer. What the other was most skilled in was dictating the battlefields, the offensive zones. It could not be rivaled. He would often see the other begin killing in all directions with an unreasonable and arrogant attitude. The balanced situation, once the two sides started to kill each other, would herald Gongsun Cha's defeat. His territory was like a crisp cookie. First, it was his borders that would crack. The gaps would grow bigger and turn into a situation where his entire defensive line would break. Brutal, forceful, charging forward. Many times, Gongsun Cha would be puzzled. In his mind, the commanding ability of the mysterious person was much higher than him, and he would be a better candidate to lead the troops. Zhuo Shixiang did not use the powerful one but threw such an important and troublesome matter to a beginner like him. He pondered it for a while before throwing the question to the back of his mind. Having finally found something that made him feel interest, and having such challenging battles ahead of him, he felt excited just thinking about it. So amusing, so interesting. Having sorted out his emotions, Gongsun Cha burrowed back into the camp. In the war chess games that Zhuo Mo had made, if the forces were not Yao, they were Mo Xiuzhe were the rarest. Other than the most classical Xiuzhe combinations, there was nothing that he could reference. In comparison, the combinations of Yama soldier types were much richer and extremely detailed. Sometimes, he would wonder. Was that elder inside Zhuo Shixiang's body an old Yama? This guess was not unsupported. Other people might not be able to see the true face of the golden armor guards, but having been in command of them for so long, how could Gongsun Cha not know? These 3 golden armor guards were the white-scaled attendants of the Yao guards. White-scaled attendants were a low-level soldier type frequently seen in the war chess. He had used them multiple times. The reason that he could use the golden armor guards to their maximum potential was due to the inspiration and help that the war chess gave him. However, what he did not understand was the power of the 3 golden armor guards far surpassed normal white-scaled attendants. Gongsun Cha completely did not care whether the mysterious person was Yao Ma or not. There were enough problems for him to have a headache about already. No matter if it was Xiuzhe or Yao Ma, there had to be great consideration taken in the combinations of soldier types. Like the classical sword seal, sword Diana combinations of the Xiuzhe. The combinations of the Yao Ma were more variable and rich. But Gongsun Cha only had 28 Ningmai and 26 of them were sword Xiu. Of the last 2, one was a saber Xiu, while the other was a Diana. Completely all battle Xiu, but there were no Xiuzhe that could take a support role. On paper, this kind of battle force was very strong. In reality, for group battle, the structure of this kind of force was extremely terrible. The effect of everyone was the same, that meant that the group lacked depth, diversity, and was therefore unable to complete formation transformations. Sword Xiu had the strongest offensive power, but it did not mean they did not have weaknesses. Compared to other Xiuzhe, Sword Xiu lacked the endurance for long battles. Sword Xiu were heavy on offense and light on defense, their other flaw was their defense was too weak. Large-scale battles were different than individual battles. Sword Xiu were the kings of individual combat. Their strong and sharp attacks and their fast speed allowed them to be at an advantage in short individual battles, to pressure the enemy to the point of suffocation. In individual battles, Sword Xiu only needed to consider how to kill off the enemy before the enemy could threaten their weakness. But in group fighting, especially on large scales, Sword Xiu usually needed the protection of other Xiuzhe at their sides so they could release their strong offensive power. If a troop only had Sword Xiu, the enemy only needed to stop their first wave of attacks. Large-scale Sword Xiu fatalities would only follow this as the Sword Xiu began to tire. Okay, in reality, he didn't need so many transformations. Gongsun Cha could only tell himself this. In any case, after leaving Little Mountain Jia, everyone would split up. Zhuo Shixiang had told him this multiple times. The reason was very simple. They couldn't support such a large group. On this matter, Zhuo Mo did not lie. If one wasn't in charge, they did not know the price of food and supplies. Zhuo Mo felt the pressure already with 40 people. Especially in Little Mountain Jia where the only things that could replenish Ling power were Ling grains and Jingshi. Yet the intensity of training could not be lessened. They were racing for time against the Yao army. The later they left Little Mountain Jia, the higher the danger. Jingshi had side effects and could not be used in large amounts, so the expenditure was not as high as Ling grains. Zuemo quickly could not support it any longer. It's not going to work if we keep going like this, Zuemo said decisively. The Ling grains I have are only enough to support us for another half a month. Half a month, Gongsun Cha looked at Zuemo. What should we do? Battle to feed battle. Zuemo did not hesitate to say. We can only do this. Gongsun Cha felt helpless. These 40 people were still far from what he demanded. However, he had no solutions to the problem that Zuemo stated. However, he instantly thought of the necklace he had mentioned before. Have the talismans been made? I've grasped the method, Zuemo spread his hands, but there aren't enough materials. With that, Gongsun Cha completely cut off his thoughts about the same heart necklace, assembling the 40 people and departing instantly. Zuemo actually wanted to go with them, but thinking about Chen Yucheng, who was still at the beast pool, he decided to stay and protect the base. The 3 golden armor guards were also kept behind. Of course, he said, since it was a true battle, then it should be treated as real one. To guarantee safety, Zuemo had set up formations around the mountain valley. Most of those were illusory formations. Right now, his skill with formations had grown. Little illusory formations and little killing formations were interlocked. The power wasn't high, but to distract the enemy, it was more than enough. Fire beads, seal soldiers, golden armor guards, adding on the illusory traps, his safety was quite secure. Gongsun Cha took his 40 subordinates and slowly progressed. In terms of prosperity, Little Mountain Jie could not compare to Sky Moon Jie. Naturally, there were not as many experts here as Sky Moon Jie. However, if it was in terms of harshness, Sky Moon Jie could not compare with the present Little Mountain Jie. 28 Ningmai, in Sky Moon Jie, it was not an insignificant force, but in the present Little Mountain Jie, it wasn't anything. The reason was very simple. Those Xiuzha of lesser strength had already died. Those that could survive until now were all ones with some skill and intelligence. Under such cruel conditions, the peak of Zhuji was the bottom line of survival. Ningmai first stratum was normal, Ningmai second stratum was enough to become the elite of a small troop, and Ningmai third stratum was enough to enter the rank of experts. As for Jin Dan, there was just one. These individuals, similar to the golden armor guards, their cultivation was between first and second stratum of Ningmai, but their true power was far beyond normal Ningmai second stratum. The Yao guards forged from ancient dragon bone, golden crow fire, and the nether pool, could normal people compare? 3 sword shio formed a combat unit. 3 combat units, 1 at the forward position, 2 at their sides, formed a triangle. They were the frontline guards. Gongsun Cha picked the sword shio that could fly the fastest. The other 10 combat units maintained a distance between each other. Ma Fan was alone as he weaved through these units. 3 people to an unit was Gongsun Cha's response to his lack of means. The 3-talent formation was the simplest formation, but these people still had not familiarized themselves with it yet, and this was just the simplest formation. In large-scale battles, what was crucial was the tactics. But just 40 people. If this was on a large-scale battlefield, they wouldn't even form the smallest and most basic combat unit. To command such a small group, what was most important was formations and cooperation. Formations was something unique to Xiuzha. From the most basic 3-talent formation to the super-large formations that required tens of thousands of Xiuzha to set up, they could all increase battle strength. Take for example the 3-talent formation. In the formation, the 3 people's energies would be merged, and they could communicate, increasing the connection between them. It was a very practical and useful formation. Some higher-level formations would have killing moves unique to them. If they were activated, they were so strong the sky would change color. However, it was not so easy to make a formation. Everyone inside the formation needed to accurately remember their position and the variations. This group hadn't even grasped the most basic 3-talent formation, the difficulty of such formations could be imagined. Formations might be able to increase battle power, but they were not for all purposes. In battle, the situation could change in an instant. What it tested was the perception abilities of the commander, their quick response, and the cooperation between their comrades. Gongsun Cha stood at the very center of the troop. Several of the most powerful were beside him. Ma Fan wandered around nearby. Glancing at Ma Fan, Gongsun Cha was very satisfied. Out of everyone, Ma Fan was the one most important to him. Other than his strong battle power, he had comprehension that was stronger than other people, and he could always quickly understand Gongsun Cha's intentions. So Gongsun Cha did not hesitate to make him part of the corps, and custom-made a battle tactic centered on him. Just at this time, the front passed on news. There was a situation. A flash of faint red rose and left Gongsun Cha's soft and delicate face. His first battle had come. Chapter 216, Gongsun Cha's first battle. It had been so hard to think of the Yin fire bead, but the result was that he couldn't find Yin fiend grounds and form Yin beads. It had been so hard to understand how to forge the same heart necklace, but the result was that there weren't enough materials. Luckily, that same heart necklace wasn't damaged, and had been given back to Gongsun Cha. Zhuo was depressed, but he still did what he had to do. He needed to cultivate his consciousness. There was no way around it. Jinji was a good thing, but it consumed consciousness and it was an eternal consumption. As to practicing sword scriptures, Zhuo didn't have that much interest. His 5 essence sword set had been forged. Even though there was a distance until it was perfect, but he was very content with the present progress. The power of the 5 essence sword set was very high. At the time, his idea had been very original, but now, he discovered he had made a fatal mistake. The sword formation was formed, but there was no accompanying sword scripture that he could cultivate. Of the 5 sword essence, other than Li Water sword scripture, and Ice Dragon sword scripture, he only had the appearance but not the substance of the other sword essences. Basically, his 5 essence sword formation was a paper tiger. This made him very discontent. Anyone would not be happy. Spending so many good materials, putting in so much effort, but having made such useless things. However, he temporarily did not have a solution, so he could only put it away. He didn't practice the move of little thousand-leaf hands that Pu Yao gave him. All of his spiritual power was given to Jinji in this while. He didn't even need to think about body cultivation either. Any earth energy he gathered would be given in tribute to Pu Yao in the end. It had been a long time since he had done body cultivation. Even though he knew that drawing out the earth energy was good for him, but at this point in time, it really wasn't worth the cost. He put the most time on formations. To break through Little Mountain Jia, there were only 2 paths. One was increasing his own strength. If he could reach Jin Dan, the other Jin Dan would not block him. However, was it possible? Completely impossible. The other path was what he was doing now, increasing the strength on his hands. Everything to do with commanding the group, he threw to Gongsun Cha. He believed in this battle maniac. He would definitely express the desire for battle which was concealed under those feminine and delicate features. The remaining question was, what could he do? Zhuo didn't want to wait around when it came to his own little life, and put all his hopes on Gongsun Shidi. Therefore, an extremely weighty and meaningful question was put in front of him: how could he increase the power of a group quickly? Talismans, he threw that away. He didn't even have enough materials to make the same heart necklace, much less anything else. He did have a lot of materials, but that was only if he considered only himself. If he included everyone, there really wasn't enough. Like the grandiose talismans of the Golden Armor Guards, there wouldn't be enough money even if Zhuo sold himself. Ling Dan, Zhuo quickly threw away this method. Zhuo himself had never encountered Ling Dan that could increase cultivation. Slightly less effective were those support-type Ling Dan. He could make a batch, but against a Jin Dan, it wasn't enough. What was left? Formations. Zuomo's topic of study was the MO matrix. In the beginning, he hadn't thought of the MO matrix at all. It was completely due to being forced by the lack of Ling grains that he had an extraordinarily daring idea. He could carve Mo matrices on all these shouja. The thin Ling energy in the air, after automatically gathering under the power of the MO matrix, was very substantial. Even more importantly, they would be able to use the Ling power of the Jingshi and not have to worry about the impurities of the Jingshi harming their bodies. In comparison, the Ling power in the Jingshi was much richer than in the Ling grains. Of course, his rational mind suppressed this insane idea. Right now, they were at war with the Yaoma. If he took a group of people with Mo matrix carved on them out, there would be only one outcome, being killed for being Yaoma. He had never felt how valuable the Mo matrix was before. Now, he had a deep experience of the benefits of the Mo matrix. If he couldn't carve the Mo matrix, then he could go back a step. Didn't Pu Yao say that the essence of the Mo matrix was formations? As long as he could find the formations that could purify the impurities in the Ling power, and the formations that could automatically gather Ling, wouldn't the problem be solved? He had a ready example of the Mo matrix. Due to the Mo matrix being on his body, and his extremely sensitive consciousness, he could clearly feel every change inside the Mo matrix. The simple-looking Mo matrix was far more complex than he had imagined. Zuomo's skill in formations was not low now, especially after having studied the micro-formations in dan-making. The formations in the Mo matrix had some similarities to those. Other than formations, there were many pictures that seemed decorative, yet were extremely similar to formations. If you wanted to understand which were useful, and which were not, it would take 3 to 5 years. But in Zuomo's hands, this became a very simple matter. He only had to use his consciousness to sweep across, and then he could clearly detect it. However, this was just the first step. Even though he had gotten rid of many of the distractions, but the remainder was still hard to work out. Not every formation would have a visible effect, but once they were removed, the entire Mo matrix would lose its effect. Other than that, there were some semi-formation constructs. These semi-formation constructs would form a very special kind of formation with Zuomo's flesh and blood. This was probably these constructs that merged the formations with flesh and blood. Luckily, this degree of difficulty wasn't enough to scare Zuomo. The Yao army was like a guillotine hanging over Zuomo's head. Thinking of breaking through Little Mountain Jie was enough to motivate him. The present Zuomo seemed more like a production shouja. Alright, he had always been a production shouja, Zuomo smiled in self-disdain. He probably would have never thought that his actions made Pu Yao jump in fright. Pu Yao naturally had his own aims when he had carved the Mo matrix and added the Yao seed for Zuomo. But he never would have expected Zuomo to progress so quickly. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's expression was heavy as he kept a close look. Does this guy know just how terrifying the things he was studying right now were? Gong Sun Cha's luck was not too good. He had encountered a troop of about 60 people. A troop of 60 people could be considered to be quite organized. It wasn't easy to support such a troop. This time, the groups that were still active all were not ordinary. Little Mountain Jie didn't have any low-hanging fruit left. The two sides did not exchange pleasantries. Gong Sun Cha did not feel he needed to say anything. This was a habit he had formed during war chess. Pu Yao didn't like to chit-chat with his enemies before starting to fight. Having encountered an opponent that used everything, it could be imagined what habits Gong Sun Cha had. On the other side, the people felt that they had twice as many people, and the chance of victory was high. Also, a group of 40 people definitely had some supplies, and probably wouldn't be that poor. So the two sides did not speak and the battle instantly heated up. Gong Sun Cha was slightly nervous at the beginning, but when he saw the other side rush forward in messy groups, he smiled. A very warm and sweet smile. The combat units closest to the front retreated slightly. The other side clearly had many of the habits from individual fights. Many of the shouja attacked at the same time, sword energies flying high. Since there were many of their fellows in the surroundings, they were even more brave, and naturally did not keep anything back when they attacked. Several dozen sword energies gathered like a roaring dragon. Of the 3 combat units that were ordered to retreat, one of the units were half a beat slower, and instantly were shredded to pieces. Seeing that 3 people had died, the group became even more brave, charging forward towards the people who were retreating. Having lost 3 people, Gongsun Cha didn't even bat an eyelid. Just as the forward combat units were retreating, the 2 combat units on the second row moved forward. 6 sword energies suddenly erupted between the 2 combat units that were retreating. Pew pew pew. The 4 sword Xiao that had been charging at the front, and were struck at full force. Blood sprayed out. The sudden change made the Xiaojia at the front panic for a beat, their charge slightly pausing. At the same time, the 2 combat units that had been retreating suddenly reversed direction, 6 sword energies leaving their hands. Another 3 unlucky souls were hit. Before they could respond, the 3 combat units that had been silently moving forward 50 zhang did not hesitate to start a third wave of attack. 9 sword energies sent out with full force turned into a net. The other side had charged too fast, their group densely packed together. The results were astounding. 5 Xiaojia were killed. The head of the other side changed expression. With one attack, the losses were 3 to 12, this made him slightly panic. The 3 waves of attack on the other side clearly had been planned. It was like a tide, one wave after the other, not giving them any chance to think. Expert. He smelled danger, but what calmed him down was that the speed on both sides had slowed down. The following battle would be prolonged combat. His side had the advantage of numbers and a higher possibility of victory. Charge and scatter them. Then hold on to them. Kill. He shouted, his voice ringing out. He had confidence in his Ningmai second stratum cultivation. Coldly snorting, he took his flying sword, and entered the chaotic fray. The distance between the 2 sides narrowed. No one had the space to charge. Gongsun Cha did not move. There was a combat unit protecting him. 4 people were standing outside the battle, yet no one seemed to notice him. Having seen the good results from the 3-section wave killing charge, his expression did not move, but the hands hidden in his sleeves were tightly fisted. He had copied this from the mysterious person in war chess. However, the mysterious person was much more effective when he used it. Gongsun Cha had suffered greatly under this maneuver, always collapsing when he encountered it. Even though it was a weaker version, it was enough to cause the enemy to suffer losses. The scene was extremely chaotic, but he was already used to even worse scenes in war chess. His mind had never been as clear as now. He quickly found the head among the enemies. His mind slightly moving, Ma Fan, who seemed to be aimlessly swimming around, started to silently cover the other like a large bird. Chapter 217, Killing Moves. And Ma Fan Mag Fan did not fly quickly and was very steady. Seeing the chaotic battlefield slowly grow larger in his vision, his mind slightly wandered. Truthfully, he admired Gongsun Cha very much. This person that looked even younger than him was a beginner among beginners. It could be seen from the terrible and disorganized training at the start. Ma Fan had assumed that his little life had been in danger now that he had landed in the hands of a greenhorn, and hadn't expected Gongsun Cha to quickly fulfill his role. The messy training had quickly become neat and organized. These days, everyone had shifted from their rebelliousness and terror-induced submission, and gradually showed true respect and compliance. Everyone had climbed over mountains of corpses. They might never had heard of these methods before, but they could tell if it was useful or not. In a group like this, as long as you could continuously lead everyone to victory, and everyone's lives had some guarantees, no one would rebel. Ma Fan was the first person to realize that the tactics Gongsun Cha had set up were useful. Before everyone else had understood this, he had started to rigorously train until he could meet Gongsun Cha's demands. In secret, everyone called Gongsun Cha Lil Miss Gongsun because he looked feminine and delicate like a woman. This also included a portion of maliciousness and slander. No way around it. They couldn't defeat him, so they could only vent in private. Of course, no one dared to say the name in front of him. Lil Miss might be feminine, but he was a vicious female. Staring at the chaotic battle, the words that Gong Sun Cha had keep on filling into his ears appeared in Ma Fan's mind. You have to notice the distance between the enemy's troop, you have to notice the offensive rhythm of the enemy. After each strong attack, there would be an extremely short time where their Ling power cannot catch up. This is when the enemy is the weakest. You have to notice the important targets of the enemy, you need to have battlefield awareness. All of this was extremely strange and unfamiliar to him. Such a troublesome Lil Miss, reflexively muttering, he already reached the border of the battle. Out of the corner of his eyes, he glanced at the leader of the other side. He was extremely eye-attracting, pressuring down a combat unit by himself. Ma Fan did not go immediately to give aid. The three people were on the disadvantage, and seemed very bad off, but the three-person formation had not become messy, and they could support themselves for a while. Just at this time, he noticed there were some people whose Ling power was boiling. It was clearly the early signal for strong sword moves being cast. Usually, the stronger the sword move, the longer it took to prepare. However, the combat unit they were facing evidently were also preparing a big move. No matter which side, the Xiuzha all instinctively chose to distance themselves. The collision between great moves were very strong, and could affect others. A light flashed through Ma Fan's eyes. Rather than retreat, he slowly neared the two sides. Taste Yes, Crimson Rainbow Sword. A crimson sword light rose with a howl. Haha, me too, Great Ling Sword Axe. A blue sword energy that was half sword and half axe appeared and heavily sliced down. Bat Ghost crying. 7 or 8 black sword energies shaped like bats made flapping sounds as they drew out a strange curve and headed to the three people. The three members of the combat unit did not panic, maintaining the three-talent formation. At the beginning of the battle, they had been panicked, but as they gradually familiarized themselves with the wondrous energy connection unique to the three-talent formation, their cooperation grew, and their confidence also grew. The great moves of the other side did not make them lose focus. Even usually, one-on-one, they were not afraid, much less now, when they had the aid of the three-talent formation. The leader of the three was Lei Peng. Before he was tamed by Lil Miss, this guy had been the most vicious and rebellious of them all. Now that someone had ran in front of him and boasted, he instantly got angry. His copperbell-sized eyes stared angrily, his fan-sized large hands opening. Pointing at the three people in front of him, he hatefully spat out. Get them. The other two people were also full of murderous intent. Everyone had made their way through rivers of blood. Who didn't have some fire? Who didn't have killing moves? One of them had a serious expression, his hands were covered in balls of blue light. The blue lights became darker, and smaller until they were just covering his hands. But this blue light was very concentrated and seemed like water. The two hands punched out, two bright blue fist energies leaving his hands, growing as they moved. A concentrated energy covered the landscape. Sky Wave Fist. Zhong Ru was the only Diana of the group. To be able to establish himself in this group, he naturally had his unique qualities. As he attacked, it instantly showed his exceptionalism. At his side, his fellow that was called Nian Lu coldly snorted. He raised his hands up towards the sky, his figure spinning on the spot. His speed increased until his figure became a blur. Above his head, a lotus flower formed with astonishing speed. Flower bud, open, bloom. The faint sword essence was like the sway of the lotus flower, making people uncontrollably attracted to it. Suddenly, a snowy white lotus flower petal tipped in pink fell off. After that, the flower petals fell off, one after the other, until all of them fell off. One flower petal was one sword energy. 7 or 8 white sword energies with a hint of pink, 80% serenity, 20% enchantment, formed. Nian Lu's ultimate move, Lotus Flower Fall. Lei Peng naturally did not want to be left behind. He was holding a black saber in his hands. With both of his hands, he raised the black saber above his head, and breathed. A heavy strike. A black saber energy shot at the three opposite them. A vicious and brutal energy was like a ferocious tiger opening its jaws. Abyss beast soul-eating saber. Killing move against killing move. Blue, red, white, black, multicolored streams of energy flew everywhere. The face-off between 6 Ningmai had caused the region between the two sides to become turbulent and distorted with Ling power. No one dared to near. If they were sucked in, even their bodies may not remain. Lei Peng and the two wavered slightly. Of the opposing 3, 2 had began bleeding from their mouths and noses. Without a doubt, Lei Peng and the others had slightly won. A saber xiu, a sword xiu, a Diana xiu, this kind of combination was unique among the 40 people. The faces of the enemy 3 were uncertain, and a desire to retreat began rising. This kind of full-force collision did not have any technique. The difference in strength could be easily seen. The Xiuzha with the crimson rainbow sword moved his eyes. Since their side had more people, why should the 3 of them take the risk? He was just going to call for his fellow to come over when he had a feeling in his heart. He couldn't help but turn his head. A person, carried by countless flickering images, silently appeared beside him. Ambush. His expression changed. Just as he was going to speak, the voice that reached his mouth was shoved back by the afterimages that filled his vision. A flying sword hit his Ling armor without a sound. Destructive Ling power furiously flooded his body. Illusory shadowless sword of destruction. The 4th grade Ling armor on his body was like paper, instantly breaking into pieces. It was as if he was hit directly with a large hammer, his body flying like a sandbag towards the other Xiuzha. This Xiuzha changed expression and wanted to catch his fellow. Careful. Before he finished, under the body of his fellow that was flying over, a silent light flashed. When he could respond, a flying sword that gave off no light was 3 zhang away from him. Damn it! He hurriedly put up his flying sword. The swords impacted, ding, a small sound of collision. His body shook, the blood in his face suddenly leaving his face. His eyes were full of disbelief, his eyes slowly becoming empty. The remaining Xiuzha was also pale, and wanted to retreat. Pew! A white sword energy that had a hint of pink at the tip passed through his chest. His pupils suddenly expanded. He saw the smear of cold smile at the corner of Nian Lu opposite him. Ma Fan's ambush had shocked the entire field. He had successfully bought time for the Lei Peng's group to breath. Nian Lu had made an ambush, and the panicked enemy had fallen. Ma Fan suppressed the roiling of the Ling power inside his body. Having continuously cast, illusory shadowless sword of destruction, twice while flying at high speed, he couldn't help but feel a lack of strength. He didn't go to see if the other had lived or not, hurriedly starting his illusory movement method and disappeared. From the collision of the two sides killing moves, to the 3 people losing their lives, the sudden change shocked many people. Ma Fan took the chance to escape. His illusory movement method was most skilled at confusing the enemy. The more chaotic the battle, the more beneficial it was to him. Ma Fan's entry slowly caused the balance of battle to tilt towards their side. The monstrous training regime of the past while had started to show its power. The combat units started to help cover and aid each other. Everyone slowly became more used to cooperating with Ma Fan. The more tense the situation, the more advantageous it was for Ma Fan to attack. He was accurate each time. Without knowing it, the advantage grew on their side. Bao De felt that this fight today was terrible. Their side clearly had the advantage in numbers, but as they fought, they grew more tired. He felt as though they had entered quicksand and were unable to use their strength. It wasn't evident in the beginning, but as they fought, the feeling of weakness became even more clear. The other side was 3 people, all clearly Ningmai first stratum, but they managed to stop him. The other side's tactics were very soft, not daring to face him straight on. He felt he wanted to spit blood. Every time he was going to defeat the three, that person who came out of nowhere would come and disturb him, making his rhythm pause. Because of this pause, the advantage he had managed to build up would disappear and he had to start from the beginning. After fighting for so long, he saw the hints. The three were cooperating very well. One offensive, one distracting, and one defensive, and the offensive and defensive would frequently change positions. At the beginning, he had assumed he could quickly get rid of the enemy, but they had managed to stand up until now. He felt quite embarrassed, and his attacks grew stronger, but he hadn't assumed it got more annoying the more he fought. Other than the three he was facing, he still had to watch out for the annoying guy that appeared out of nowhere and was as irritating as a fly. He dared to disdain the three in front of him, but didn't dare to underestimate Ma Fan. That guy was Ningmai's second stratum. Fuck it, this was no way to fight. Chapter 219, Rewards Conference in Secret. Whenever everyone ever discussed Lil Miss's feminine and delicate face, they couldn't help but be slightly scornful of it. However, when Lil Miss was sitting in front of them, everyone couldn't help but straighten their spines, their eyes straight forward. People like Lei Peng, who had already spent some time under Lil Miss' command, had experience of what to do. In front of Lil Miss, it was best for their eyes to look at their nose to be pointed at their heart. Do not go looking at Lil Miss' eyes. You would always find they were freezing. Reward based on performance. Lil Miss' voice was not loud and was feminine as usual. Lei Peng stilled. Had old Nian been speaking the truth? They were really going to reward based on performance? His heart quickened and he couldn't help but move his body. It wasn't just him. Everyone could not disguise the joy on their faces. There were Jinji in their bodies, so their lives were in Zuomo's hands. They had originally assumed that they would be cannon fodder, and the thought had never crossed their minds that they would be rewarded. Let's start. Everyone's expression landed in Gong Sun Cha's eyes. His heart was very clear, the corners of his mouth rising. He decided to throw out a heavy bomb at the beginning. This is a 5th grade movement method. Boss decided to take it out as a reward. Virum. Everyone's eyes turned to stare at the jade scroll in Lil Miss' hands. So hot they almost melted the jade scroll. The temperature in the room instantly rose. 5th grade movement method. That was 5th grade. Any spell, when it reached 5th grade, the value was not comparable. No matter if it was in Sky Moon Jia, or in Little Mountain Jia, only core disciples could cultivate 4th grade spells. This was an unwritten rule. And 5th grade spells? The majority of sects did not possess a 5th grade spell. Now a 5th grade movement method was in front of them, a place they could touch. Breathing was rushed in the room. Without knowing it, excitement climbed onto everyone's faces. If it wasn't for the Jinji, half of the people would definitely go up and steal. Gong Sun Cha was very satisfied with everyone's performance. Fair reward and punishment was a governance that every stable troop must have. Gong Sun Cha was not worried this crowd of brutes would betray, but it had been a problem for him to increase their motivation. This is an intermediate 4th grade flying sword, called Black Lock, pure in quality. It is slightly oriented towards the water element. It is the best flying sword of this rewards conference. The flying sword was about 1 chi long, the body narrow and black, glistening with a blue light. Once it was taken out, a slightly sword essence rippled like waves across the entire room. Hiss. Inhales sounded below. This group all had good eyes. The quality of the Black Lock sword was not average. Intermediate 4th grade. Most of these shoujo were in Ningmai, but only 5 or so of them had 4th grade flying swords, and of those people, all their flying swords were low 4th grade flying swords. This 9 Dawn Ling armor, intermediate 4th grade, it is the best protective talisman of this conference. Wood element, the Ling armor has 4 formations: vitality, evil removing, tranquil mind, and illusion break. In places rich with wood element power, it can automatically absorb wood element power to repair the Ling armor. Gulp. As they swallowed, everyone stared at the Ling armor. This was something good. If they had this Ling armor, it was like getting half of a life. It was like Gongsun Cha did not notice everyone's eyes. One by one, he introduced all the talismans and flying swords. In the room, the heavy sound of breathing was like thunder. Everyone's faces were red and excited. Many people had pulled open their clothing, a layer of sweat on their foreheads. However, they did not detect it, their eyes tightly locked on the talismans and flying swords in front of Gongsun Cha. The light given off by the talismans and flying swords merged and reflected off each person's eyes. Lei Peng's forehead was full of sweat. His throat was dry, his copper bell-like eyes staring wide, afraid he would miss a talisman. When the last talisman was finished being introduced, his heart finally rested. Reflexively, he released a breath. His ears suddenly heard the sound of breathing. He jumped in fright at his loud breathing. It was over. If he angered Lil Miss, it would be terrible. He grimaced at the first thought that came into his head. But when he saw the breathing of the people around him, he managed to realize that it wasn't just the sound of his own breathing, but everyone breathing out together. The slightly sounds of breathing, under such silent environments, would stand out so clearly. The room quickly became silent, extremely silent, everyone's hearts rose again. Everyone knew what was coming next was the most important. There were only this many prizes, who would get it? How would it be divided? There was a lot involved was this. That would determine what landed on their own hands was good or trash. Those with the most achievements will pick first, one apiece. Lil Miss was extremely clear in this silent environment where the drop of a pin could be heard. Ma Fan is first. A blush suddenly rose on Ma Fan's face like he had been drinking. In the admiring and jealous eyes of everyone else, he stood up and did not hesitate to pick the 5th grade movement method. Even though everyone had mostly guessed already, but they couldn't help but have disappointed expressions. One of those was Lei Peng. 5th grade movement method. Seeing it slink away in front of his eyes, this feeling wasn't just terrible. But that was just jealousy. No one could say anything to Ma Fan picking first. The effect that Ma Fan had in this battle could not have been done by anyone else. Before everyone had digested the disappointment from the 5th grade movement method being picked away, Lil Miss opened again. Lei Peng, Zhong Ru, Nian Lu, your group is up. You can pick 1 4th grade, 2 3rd grade. Lei Peng's head rang, and then blanked. It was his turn. He didn't know how he stood up. Nian Lu and Zhong Ru's faces were also full of disbelief. It was like a dream. Even Zhong Ru, the most composed of the three, didn't manage to keep his composure. The three people looked at each other. After a while, they found it hard to decide who would get the 4th grade talisman. Seeing the situation, Gongsun Cha decided to decide for them. Straws, set down the order, and take turns in the future. This method was very fair. No one had an objection. The sweat on Lei Peng's forehead grew even more dense, his heartbeat racing because he drew first. The second was Zhong Ru, the third was Nian Lu. He really was shameful, couldn't even calm down. He criticized himself. But he was not slow in picking. He did not hesitate in picking the 9 Dawn Ling armor. Sighs rose in the surroundings. Clearly, there were several that wanted this Ling armor. For some reason, when he heard the sighs, Lei Peng felt every pore of him was in pleasure, and extremely smug. He instantly put on the Ling armor. Zhong Ru picked upper 3rd grade vambraces, and Nian Lu picked an upper 3rd grade boots. Even though they didn't pick something 4th grade, these two were also very good among the 3rd grade, the two people were unable to keep their hands off. Gongsun Cha measured achievement based on combat unit. Each combat unit could pick 1 4th grade item, and 2 3rd grade. The 4th grade items were quickly divided. Those ranked behind didn't even get one, and could only stare. But everyone basically got 1 talisman. As to the Xiuzha like Bao De who had just turned from captive, they could only stare. Gongsun Cha didn't plan on rewarding them. The remaining talismans were put to be used as rewards for the groups that were exceptional in training. Gong Sun Cha also clearly stated that once the reward was given, it was the person's personal property. Other people could not take it. Like the 5th grade movement method. Ma Fan picked it, so it could not be given to someone else. If anyone else wanted to learn, they had to ask Ma Fan. As to how to pass it on, or whether to pass it on, that was Ma Fan's business. No matter if it was Suemo, or Gong Sun Cha, they would never have predicted the effect this rewards conference would have. Gong Sun Cha still supervised the people in training. The last battle had revealed many insufficiencies. The 3-section wave-killing charge, if it was a well-trained troop, if it was his mysterious opponent, they would only need to use it once to destroy the enemy. He hadn't just been unable to destroy the enemy, but had sunk into prolonged fighting. This made Gong Sun Cha, who usually demanded highly of himself, very dissatisfied. Lil Miss was dissatisfied, so everyone didn't have good days. However, what Gong Sun Cha was puzzled by was just how unexpected these people were in training. Everyone seemed to have been shot up with chicken blood, howling as they furiously trained. And when Gong Sun Cha fulfilled his promise by rewarding the talismans to the group that had finished training, he found to his shock that they completely did not need his supervision. There was not a novice among this group of people. They all knew the importance of talismans. Who would dislike having one more talisman? On the battlefield, one more talisman was one more guarantee on their own life. There was no danger of dying in training. This kind of good matter, if it was in the past, everyone would disdain to attend, but in the cruel little mountain Jia of the present, no one had heard of it. No one fell behind. Not having gotten any Ling grains, and having some more mouths to feed, the pressure of Zhua Mo to supply Ling grains instantly increased, especially in the recent days where this group had suddenly started to furiously train for some reason. The consumption of Ling grains multiplied. Zhua Mo felt the pressure multiply. He put 120% of his effort into studying the Mo matrix day and night. Once he had an idea, he would immediately try it out, not caring for the consumption of materials. Seeing the amount of Ling grains decrease, he felt even more pressured. His progress was not bad. He had eliminated half of the useless constructs. Less than 1/3 of the constructs were remaining. But this 1/3 included more than 70 formation-like constructs. Zhua Mo did not have the time to do theoretical analyses. The time was tight. He decided to use the stupidest and most effective method. Try one by one. He started to crazily try one formation after another. In the span of a few days, his room was full of failed products like a little mountain. Not having closed his eyes for 7 days and nights, he didn't even meditate. When his Ling power was used up, he would grasp a Jingshi to absorb Ling power. He looked quite fragile. After 7 days and nights, even if his spiritual power had reached the stage of manifestation, he had reached a limit. However, Zhua Mo forgot all the labor, all the exhaustion. He dazedly looked at a peerlessly ugly thing on his hands. Chapter 220, The Fatal Rotten Metal. Silver Bauda really had his vision broadened in these past days. The troop in front of him was different than any other that he had been a part of before. 3 people to each squad, that 3-talent formation, that was a pleasure and a pain, enough Ling grains, and there were rewards for the people placed under Jinji. He looked at these old-timers who were now like children fighting to be first. There was no conspiracy. Everything was done in broad daylight. It was so simple it could not be any more straightforward, but the troop had transformed by such a direct method. The longer he stayed, the more he felt just how powerful the boss of this group was. It wasn't a power that people could see at a simple glance, but a calm power hidden behind fog and mist. Even though everyone was afraid of Lil Miss, Bauda had been a leader, and he could tell who was truly in charge. With such finesse, he wouldn't be an ordinary person in the future. To follow such a boss, the future wouldn't be too hard. But boss was a little guy around 20-something that had just entered Ningmai first stratum, the luck. No matter how many thoughts swirled in Bao De's mind, his training amount would not lessen compared to the rest. His past identity as the leader and his Ningmai second stratum cultivation did not give him any privileges. What made him feel helpless and depressed was the fact the other two people in his little troop were furiously training. It was just a few talismans, was it worth all this? Having been a leader, Bao De naturally wouldn't care about just third-grade talismans. Yet he did not want to get into conflict with his teammates, due to dragging them down, and had to furiously train as well. There was no way around it. Miss rewards were based on combat units, other than being like Ma Fan, who was a combat unit on his own. Adding on that Miss was staring from the side, he did not dare to slack. Do not offend Miss in any circumstance. This was the most widespread phrase in the camp. However, wasn't that boss? Bao De saw boss holding a strange object and walk into the camp out of the corner of his eye. He secretly paid attention. However, with his distraction, the three-talent formation that had been flowing smoothly came to an abrupt halt. With the pause, the rhythm of the entire team was disturbed. The three people had to stop. Seeing the dissatisfaction in the two people's eyes, Bao De hurriedly apologized. He could offend anyone except his teammates. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died on the battlefield. Gong Sun Cha saw Zhuo Mo hold something strange and couldn't help but ask in curiosity, Shixiang, what is this? Ling processing, Zhuo Mo stopped. He raised the ugly object in his hands in front of his face. What should he call this? It could barely be called a talisman. But there were many kinds of talismans. This thing, which category did it belong to? Treasure box. A strangely shaped box, the box was covered in holes and crack, patched with shapes of various colors and sizes, which made it hard to look at. Ling processing formation. Zhuo Mo pondered and decided to change its shape for next time. Otherwise, it would be hard to even name such an object. A bit ugly, Gong Sun Cha gave a fair review. Seeing the unfriendliness in Shixiang's eyes, he hurriedly tried to move on. What's the use of this? Speaking of the use of this object, Zhuo Mo couldn't help but be smug. Oh, not that much. It can just process the Ling power in the Jingshi, and get rid of impurities. Get rid of the impurities in the Ling power of Jingshi, Gong Sun Cha first stilled, but he quickly responded. His eyes suddenly widened, his voice unconsciously raising, get rid of the impurities in the Ling power of Jingshi? Gong Sun Shidi's reaction made Zhuo Mo even more proud. Exactly. Gong Sun Cha's eyes lit up, his voice tinted with excitement. It can replace Ling grains? Exactly. Zhuo Mo felt his body was unspeakably comfortable. He snickered. I tried already. The effect is pretty good. Taking it here was to find someone to try it out. Without another word, Gong Sun Cha stood up, swept the people training, and saw Lei Peng and the other two who had just finished. He beckoned, Lei Peng, you three come over. Hearing the summons of Miss, the three hurried over. Gong Sun Cha turned around and asked Zhuo Mo, Shixiang, how do you use this? Oh, put your hand on top of this, and start your scripture. Zhuo Mo put his palms on the two round formations on top of the box. Gong Sun Cha said to Lei Peng, you try. Oh, Lei Peng said with confusion. He didn't understand what this garbage in front of him, but he still complied in putting his hands inside the round formations and started his scripture. Ha! Lei Peng gasped, Ling power. A stream of Ling power was absorbed through his palms and quickly flowed along his channels. Such pure Ling power. He was overjoyed. Such pure Ling power, it meant that he didn't have to spend so much energy on processing Ling power. Endless Ling power burrowed through his palms into his body. In a quick while, he felt the empty channels inside his body feel full. Only now did he suddenly realize the use of this thing. Why was Little Mountain Jia so terrible right now? The most important reason was that the Ling energy in the air had become thin, so thin that it could not be absorbed into the bodies of Xiuzha. Everyone knew that the Ling power of Xiuzha was obtained from the world of nature. The Ling energy in the air was the most important source. After these Ling energy were taken into the body, they were processed and turned to even purer Ling power to be stored in the channels of the Shouja. The Ling energy becoming extremely thin in Little Mountain Jie meant that the biggest source of Ling energy for Shouja had been cut off. Shouja were forced to find other ways, like consuming Ling grains. The Ling power contained in the Ling grains were easy to absorb, and were not harmful. The Jingshi that people usually used contained more Ling power than Ling grains, but due to the impurities in the Ling power of Jingshi were more domineering than the impurities of the Ling energy of the air, it was much harder to absorb. If it was used in the long term, it would damage the body. Only some large sects had secret methods to resolve the impurities in the Jingshi. Secret method. When Lei Peng's hands left the box, his mind seemed to be wandering, his expression slightly strange. Nian Lu looked in puzzlement at Lei Peng. It was very rare to see Big Peng have this expression. He couldn't help but look again at that extremely strange and hideous box. This garbage had a use. When his hands left the box, his expression was also strange, muttering something continuously in his mouth like he had seen a ghost. After Zhong Ru tried, his expression could not disguise his shock. No matter what waves had been stirred up in the three people, Zhua Mo and Gong Sun Cha were very satisfied with the result of the experiment. The remainder was to slightly modify the appearance. It really was too ugly, even Zhua Mo himself found it hard to tolerate. Gong Sun Cha's sparkling eyes tightly locked on the extremely ugly box. He was very clear what this object meant for them. As long as they had this, there was one less chain that was on their necks. In the present Little Mountain Jia, the price of Ling grains had been inflated to a ridiculous price. In reverse, due to the lack of goods, the utility of Jingshi was much less. It was common to see Jingshi that had been thrown away. The rare Ling grains had become the most common currency in Little Mountain Jie. But there is a problem. Zhuo Mo's words pulled Gong Sun Cha back. He jumped. What problem? If we are producing in large quantities, we need lots of rotten metal silver. Zhuo Mo's tone was slightly bitter. I still have some, but it is just enough to make a few. Gong Sun Cha stilled, and thought it was unfortunate. He hurriedly asked, is this rotten metal silver very rare? It is a very common third-grade material. Zhuo Mo spread his hands. I've used a lot so there's not much left. This problem, Gong Sun Cha thought and then raised his hands, indicating for everyone to gather. Everyone stopped their training, looked at each other, before gathering. Their expressions were all puzzled. Lil, Miss had never interrupted their training before. Who knows where there is rotten metal silver? Gong Sun Cha asked. Many Shouja were confused. What was rotten metal silver? Suddenly, a person raised their hands. I know. That person was Baoda. Where? Gong Sun Cha stared at Baoda. When he met Lil, Miss Sharp Eyes, a cold sweat ran down Baoda's body. However, he had been a leader before, and suppressed the shock inside, pretending to be calm. This one doesn't know about the finished product, but this one knows a rotten metal silver mine. Mine. Zhuo Mo's eyes brightened. Where? Baoda swallowed and obediently responded, a place about 300 li from here, called Stone Mountain Beach. Before, it was the location for a sect of Spell Sword sect, now it's possessed by a group. Zhuo Mo turned to look at Gong Sun Cha. Gong Sun Cha instantly understood what he meant. He wanted the mine. Gong Sun Cha was slightly puzzled. Even if they had the mine, there was no one to do the mining. However, since Shixiang said he wanted it, then it meant he had a way. He turned to stare at Baoda. How many people are there? What are their origins? Baoda hurriedly said. About 60 or so people. The head, Xia Shan, is vicious and cruel. Ningmai third stratum. His subordinates are all above Ningmai. They heard that Spell Sword sect had Ling grains, so they massacred Spell Sword sect and took over Stone Mountain Beach. He then carefully said, if boss wants it, you can buy it at very low cost from Xia Shan's hands. This one has some relationship with him, no need. Gongsun Cha waved his hands, and then said, continue training, to hurry the people away to cultivate. Baoda's words were choked up in his throat. However, he perceptively went to train. What do you plan on doing? Suemo asked in curiosity. He knew that Shidi definitely had an idea. We can beat them until they are crippled, Gongsun Cha said unconcernedly. There is no reason to give them any jingsher. They want to take food from our mouths, humph. Suemo shook his head helplessly. Gongsun Shidi's battle mania was acting up again. Xia Shan's group was really pitiful. He couldn't help but feel sympathy, but when the words reached his own mouth the only thing that came out was, hurry. Chapter 221, What is Puyao doing? Suemo quickly made the new product. Compared to the broken box, the new product was like a piece of art. It was a meditation mat woven from black morning glory, pure black and smooth to the touch. Hair like strands of rotten metal silver forming the formations were in exquisite and complex patterns. If the mat was flipped over, there were 5 openings that Jingji could be put in. Suemo had originally planning on making them even smaller to make it much easier to carry, but in the end, he still decided to make them into meditation mats. His technique of weaving mediation mats was very good. The meditation mats were named Black Processing Meditation Mats. On the foundation of the Ling processing formations, he had added Mind Concentration and Calm Heart formations. The effect of the Black Processing Meditation Mats drastically increased. In one go, Suemo had used all the rotten metal silver to make 5 black processing meditation mats. With the 5 black processing meditation mats both Suemo and Gongsun Cha steadied their heart. The 5 black processing meditation mats were not a lot, but if they were used in turns, it could barely suffice. After giving the 5 black processing meditation mats to Gongsun Cha, Suemo didn't care anymore. His gains this time was not just the Ling processing formation. The MO matrix on Suemo's body was a low-level MO matrix called the Copper Rhinoceros MO matrix. The biggest effect of this matrix was that it could automatically temper his body. But even as one of the simplest MO matrix, after being analyzed, it was found to be composed of hundreds of little micro-formations. Suemo had never seen the majority of these micro-formations and didn't know their effects. But after this time, after finishing his analysis, and trying to forge, he had a direct understanding of these unfamiliar formations. Of the many formations of the Copper Rhinoceros MO matrix, there were 3 formations that Suemo felt were most useful: Ling Gathering Formation, Ling Processing Formation, and Body Tempering Formation. There had been a detailed introduction about the Ling Gathering Formation in the Kuan-Luan Preliminary Formations Jade Scroll. But the Ling Gathering Formation that Suemo had found this time was different than any kind of Ling Gathering Formation he had ever seen. It was even more outstanding at gathering Ling. The entire formation naturally formed, and was so exquisite that Suemo had sighed countless times at the wonders of nature. This isn't bad. Puyao appeared out of nowhere, and stared at the Ling Gather Formation that Suemo was carving now. Suemo had long gotten used to Puyao's ghostly appearances. His hand didn't even tremble. Of course I know it is a good thing. Suemo did not disguise the pride he felt. He glanced at Puyao out of the corner of his eyes. With GE skills, how can the things that GE makes not be good things? Oh, not bad, not bad. Finishing, Puyao faintly nodded before disappearing. Suemo, who had wanted to show off, felt his punch had missed and his chest felt suffocated. However, he was also puzzled. Puyao, the guy who did not rise early unless there was something to do, he had just ran over to say that this was not bad? There was a problem. Definitely was a problem. Yet, Suemo couldn't think of where the problem was. He did not think on it and instead started to work with the Ling Gathering Formation in front of him. The Ling Gathering Formation he had obtained from the Copper Rhinoceros MO matrix was exquisite and tiny. The difficulty of carving it was slightly high, but the use was also very broad. He could carve this ling-gathering formation on talismans and flying swords. Talismans and flying swords could continuously gather ling energy from the air. Over time their intelligence would grow. Any material, if they were put in places with thick ling energy, after being soaked in ling energy, the qualities of the material would gradually be changed for the better. Zhuo had an even more daring idea, to carve the ling-gathering formation on the body like the Mo matrix. This way the body could constantly take in ling energy from the surroundings. Even though the amount of ling energy taken in each day would be small, but after accumulating for months and years, this amount would be terrifying. This point, Zhuo, who had a Mo matrix, had a direct experience. If it wasn't that his channels were not able to store ling power before, he would have broken through to Ningmai long ago. Even now, his cultivation speed was far faster than normal Shouja. The body tempering formation was using ling power to continuously temper the blood, flesh, bones, and tendons of the body. Other than Diana Xiu, other Shoujo would rarely cultivate their body, but in Zhuo's experience, a strong body was not a bad thing. Even more, no time had to be spent on this. It could automatically temper the body. Would anyone refuse? Most importantly, the three formations that he had analyzed and separated out did not look anything like a Mo matrix. No one would connect it to a Mo matrix. In these days where Yaoma were roaming about, this point was especially important. After making the black processing meditation mats, Zhuo instantly felt the pressure decrease. He hadn't found how to use the three micro formations right now. He already had the Mo matrix on his body. He didn't need the three formations. He decided to cultivate his spiritual power. According to Pu Yao, the road he was on was star spiritual cultivation. To Zhuo, star spiritual cultivation was slightly novel. Pu Yao's suggestion was to first strengthen the 10 stars, and he had given the related methods. Zhuo only had to absorb star power, then feed it back to the stars in his sea of consciousness to enlarge his source. It was coincidentally night now. He walked out of the room, and raised his head to look at the sky dotted with stars. He split his legs apart, forward and back, his body like a coiled snake raising its head, his mouth slightly open, his hands pushing on the air by the side, making an extremely strange and awkward pose. His mind empty, the consciousness leaf hand spread its 5 fingers and faced the far stars like a sunflower. His breathing slowly disappeared. A thread of star light fell off the star above Zhuo's head. It was like a silver mist, thread after thread swallowed in Zhuo's mouth. Zhuo felt his mind have a mysterious connection with the star above his head. A vast and ancient presence, from a deep and unknown place, crossing countless eras, and came to him. For some reason, his heart felt moved. A faint silver mist burrowed into Zhuo's mouth, and effortlessly entered his channels. The ling power in his channels were as quiet as a virgin, not having any enmity against the star power that had been absorbed into his body. These threads of star power made one circuit around the channels inside his body, and then entered the space between Zhuo's brows like a sparrow returning to its nest. In the void above the sea of consciousness, thread after thread of silver mist entered a dim star. Pu Yao looked at the star above his head and then took away his gaze. He opened his hand. On his palm, there was a puddle of black water. In the center of the black water, there was a miniature altar floating. Nether pool. Finally formed. Pu Yao said to himself, hopefully this will work. Finishing, he threw the puddle of black water towards the ground. The hand-sized nether pool expanded in a blink to a black pond about 1.5 mu large. On the altar floating in the center, an enchanting black flame jumped. Pu Yao flew onto the altar. The black fire surrounded him and burned silently. The black water in the nether pool roiled as if there were countless serpents restlessly swimming under the surface. Pu Yao closed his bloody pupil, his expression solemn. He suddenly shouted, "Rise!" The altar under Pu Yao's feet suddenly had an astounding power to attract all the black water in the pool flooding towards the altar. The black water quickly flooded the altar, reaching up to Pu Yao's feet. Pu Yao did not move, allowing the black water to creep up over his feet. In a blink, the black water was above Pu Yao's head. An enormous ball of black water stood on the altar. The scene seemed extremely unbalanced. Compared to the black water ball, the altar was pitifully small, making one worried that the enormous black water ball would crush the altar into pieces. Yet this crude altar was as steady as rock. The black water covering Pu Yao flowed restlessly and sped up. An hour later, the speed the black water ball was spinning at was at an astounding level. The hissing of high spinning speed was not sharp, but still frightening. Having finished his cultivation, Zuemo noticed the abnormality in his sea of consciousness. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was very shocked. What was Pu Yao doing? The spinning of the black water ball was still increasing. Zuemo sensitively noticed that as the spinning increased, the black water ball started to show signs of instability. What does this guy want to do? Zuemo muttered, not daring to move his eyes away. The spinning speed of the black water ball was still increasing. The signs of instability were increasing. The spherical black water ball was majorly distorted. It seemed the situation wasn't good. Zuemo was slightly worried. Just as the black water ball seemed to be on the verge of collapse, light suddenly shone on the altar, and a heavy presence that was filled with vitality covered the sea of consciousness. Wait a moment. Zuemo's eyes widened. He was too familiar with this presence. Earth energy. This was earth energy. Having been slightly worried, Zuemo instantly felt discontent. So this guy had stored the earth energy he had drawn out in the altar. Thinking about the pain he had endured when the earth energy had been drawn out, he gritted his teeth. Other than anger, he became even more curious. What was Pu Yao doing? Clearly, the Yao method that Pu Yao was conducting was something he had aimed for a long time ago. No matter if it was the nether pool, or the earth energy that the other had drawn out, Pu Yao had prepared for a long time. There were many methods in the world, especially the methods of Yao. Zuemo was too lazy to guess. He definitely would not guess it. He decided to sit and wait for Pu Yao to finish. With the help of the earth energy, the high-speed spinning black water ball quickly stabilized. The stable black water ball started to increase speed again. The altar continuously provided earth energy. Zuemo's eyes became even more unfriendly. How much earth energy had the guy drawn out of him? Suddenly, Zuemo raised his head and made a sound of surprise. The ever-accelerating black water ball suddenly started to change. With speed visible to the naked eye, it quickly became clear. In the span of a few blinks, the black water ball became a peerlessly clear water ball. He could clearly see Pu Yao inside the water ball. Through the high-speed water, Zuemo saw Pu Yao and instantly jumped in fright. Pu Yao's entire body was as black as ink, the skin exposed to the outside looked as though it had been dyed black. The two red crystals on his earlobes became even more alluring in contrast to the deep black. Zuemo almost did not recognize Pu Yao. He started to become nervous, pain made its way onto Pu Yao's face. Pu Yao had never shown this kind of expression before. What was this guy doing? Did something happen? Zuemo thought uncertainly. Earth energy continuously burrowed from the altar into the water ball and then into Pu Yao's body. The earth energy seemed to be able to lessen Pu Yao's pain. Pu Yao's expression slowly steadied. The black on his body started to fade. The speed of the water ball slowly slowed. When the black completely faded, the water ball also stopped. Through the round ball of water, a handsome and enchanting male stood. He opened the narrow right eye that was not covered by his hair. Chapter 222, Lil Pagoda's leveling up. Pu Yao stepped out of and off the altar, the water ball collapsing behind him. His expression was not too good. What did you do? Zuemo probed. None of your business. Pu Yao's expression was dark, his tone unfriendly. Seeing the sign, Zuemo knew that he couldn't get anything out of Pu Yao and went on his own business. Gu was busy. He started to make puppets for the stone door beach that would soon enter his hands. He had deep confidence in Gongsun Shidi, who was a battle-crazy maniac. He didn't know exactly where the confidence came from. When he thought about it, Gongsun Shidi was just a beginner, but Zuemo's confidence in his did not lessen because of this. Was this a psychological shadow from having lost in war chess several times? Zuemo muttered in his heart. There were many ways to make puppets. The most commonly seen and crude method was to use paper and bamboo to make puppets. High level used things like corpses. After death, corpses would be buried in the ground. Yin and corrosive energies would permeate for long times, and birth some qualities. But in the eyes of large sects, they still avoided using corpses. However, that was not difficult or hard to find. They only needed a suitable corpse, forge it for a bit, and the power would be significant. Most of the corpses used would rarely be human, since no one wanted their own corpses to be ruined after death. They were mostly animal corpses. However, Zuemo didn't have the territory needed to find so many animal corpses. The corpse method was not suited to him. He decided to make the simplest paper puppet, with bamboo as the skeleton, the paper as the body. Paper puppets could not be greatly relied upon, but they should manage in mining. Zuemo decided to make one to try first. He took out a second-grade rain consort bamboo and second-grade yellow paper. After a while, he finally folded out a paper person. This was the first time he had done this, so his skill was crude, and the paper figure looked very awkward. Zuemo did not care. He took up the cinnabar brush, and patiently painted characters on the paper person. After a while, the body of the paper person was covered in squiggly characters. Zuemo put down his pen in satisfaction. Bending down and pushing it in front of his face, he opened his mouth and blew a breath full of Ling energy onto the paper person. The cinnabar seals suddenly lit up. The paper person creaked as it moved, and swayed as it struggled to stand up. The paper person was about 1 chi high. As it walked, the creak of the paper and bamboo was endless. Zuemo's mind moved. The paper person awkwardly raised both of its hands, making him worry that it would scatter into pieces at any moment. Whoosh! A belt of palm-sized yellow paper suddenly flew out of the arm of the paper person. Different than the awkwardness of the paper person, the yellow paper that flew out was very nimble, accurately grasping a fist-sized rock. The paper belt shrunk back with the rock and flew in front of the paper person. Interesting. Zuemo looked at the paper puppet and found it more interesting. He controlled the paper puppet to do all kinds of movements. After a while, the paper person plopped to the floor, and would not get up no matter how Zuemo urged it. Zuemo hurriedly inspected the paper person and found the Ling energy of the paper person had been used up. This couldn't work. If they stopped after just this little bit, the paper puppets didn't have any value at all. He needed a way to increase the Ling power of the paper puppets. Zuemo stared at the paper puppet in front of him, thinking inside. What he used were all low-level materials. They could not store much Ling power. This was a problem with all low-level puppets. Zuemo suddenly thought of the Jingshi talismans. His eyes lit up. Jingshi talismans used Jingshi as the source of Ling power and could be used in the long term. After thinking it through, he felt that this characteristic of Jingshi talismans fit his needs. He wasn't going to depend on these paper puppets to fight or kill. They were only doing some hard labor. A steady source of Ling power would completely fulfill their needs. After thinking it through, he instantly made modifications. Inside the body of the paper puppet, he used thin bamboo to weave a cage that Jingshi could be held and then added new characters along the bamboo skeleton. The newly modified paper puppet was full of energy. After playing around for several hours, it showed no signs of exhaustion. However, Zuemo quickly found a new problem. The paper puppet did not know exhaustion, but after so many hours, Zuemo was tired from commanding it. The new problem was very important. These paper puppets were going to be used in mining. He couldn't always stay in the mine and direct them. That wouldn't be as efficient as him mining by himself. To get the paper puppets to mine by themselves and not need his control. If he could do this, even if the efficiency was low, he would be able to offload the heavy duty of mining. In any case, he could fold some more paper people. But quickly, Zuo realized that this problem was beyond his abilities. To make the puppet able to perceive, that meant that the puppet needed to have intelligence. There were many ways to create intelligence, but no matter which one, it wasn't something a Ningmai could do. Did this idea have to be discarded? Zuo furrowed his brows, and though there were more and more for him to do, it would be best if he could split himself in two. Split in two. Like a bolt of lightning, he suddenly thought, Lil Pagoda, something to replace him, and connected to his mind, that was Lil Pagoda. Lil Pagoda was even able to control a formation as complex and large as the Skyring Moonchime formation. A dozen or so puppets would be a piece of cake. Right. Lil Pagoda would be perfect as the supervisor. Zuo instantly felt confidence. Where was Lil Pagoda? Scanning the surroundings, he didn't find the shadow of Lil Pagoda. His mind moved, wanting to communicate with Lil Pagoda, but found that the connection between him and Lil Pagoda seemed to be blocked by an invisible force. Zuo jumped in fright and started to search. He quickly found Lil Pagoda in the corner of the room. Lil Pagoda was silently floating in the air, surrounded by an invisible pressure. Silly Bird proudly walked its bird walk around Lil Pagoda in circles, occasionally revealing its concern. Lil Black had climbed onto the ceiling, the two antennae on its head continuously waving. Seeing Silly Bird and Lil Black guarding Lil Pagoda, Zuo's heart felt very warmed. However, the warmth was quickly smashed to pieces by the roll of eyes that Silly Bird had thrown over. Silly Bird took back its gaze, raised up her bird head, and continued to calmly strut its walk. Compared to the rebelliousness of Silly Bird, Lil Black was much warmer and obedient, climbing down from the ceiling, climbing up Zuo's pants until it reached Zuo's palm. The two antennae on its head waving and fawning. So good. Zuo purposefully took out a lingdan and put it in front of Lil Black. Lil Black started to happily chomp. Silly Bird responded with a roll of the eyes filled with scorn and disdain, completely unmoved. Zuo was very irritated. At this time, a 5-colored light suddenly appeared on Lil Pagoda's body. Lil Pagoda was leveling up. The displeasure in Zuo's heart instantly was thrown away, his eyes unblinking. Silly Bird also stopped walking and stared at Lil Pagoda, the concern in her eyes completely undisguised. Lil Pagoda was Zuo's soul-tethered talisman. In the recent past, Zuo had fed it large amounts of talismans and flying swords. Zuo was not surprised it was leveling up. Zuo knew pitifully little about soul-tethered talismans, and the grades of normal talismans were useless for Lil Pagoda. In any case, he only needed to know that Lil Pagoda was becoming stronger. Zuo comforted himself. Lil Pagoda had 5 levels, and the light released by each level was different. The 5-colored lights merged and cycled. Inside the 5-colored lights, Lil Pagoda spun, the lights becoming even brighter. In a while, Lil Pagoda was covered in the blinding 5-colored light, and was unable to be seen. The 5 balls of colored light dimmed and brightened like it was breathing. Reflecting off Zuo's face, it was possible to see the nervousness in his eyes. This leveling up, what change would happen to Lil Pagoda? After several cycles, the 5-colored ball steadied. Zuo closed his eyes. He could barely make out that Lil Pagoda was changing. The steady ball of light slowly dimmed until all the light was gone. Lil Pagoda's body had become even rounder, the tip of the power almost a ball now. The eaves were even wider and smooth, giving people the feeling of chubbiness. The little gourds under the eaves were bigger and rounder. Zuo gaped. These days, did pagodas also get fat? Lil Pagoda shook its body, the chubby 5 levels of eaves opening and closing like 5 little hands that were also waving. It didn't seem to have woken up, somewhat dizzy. However, it quickly found Silly Bird guarding it at the side. The eaves of the 5 levels opened, and Lil Pagoda shook the 5 colored chubby gourds on its body as it skipped over to Silly Bird. Then it spat out a gray bead. Silly Bird skillfully picked up the gray bead and swallowed it. A tragic and pain-filled voice suddenly shook the skies. You people! I say, this is why has it been so long since this stuff had come out, you guys secretly ate it. Zwaimo furiously pointed and swore. He felt his heart was being carved with a knife. Heavens! The gray bead that Lil Pagoda had spat out a material that was not in the 5 elements. With Silly Bird's swallow, Zwaimo felt the sky and earth turn. He seemed to see a flood made out of countless jinsher enter Silly Bird's mouth like a whale swallowing water. Pain. Pain of the flesh. Lil Black, who had been chewing happily, froze, the antennae that had been waving freezing in the air. It slowly retreated, step by step, as slow as a turtle. When it found that Zwaimo did not seem to notice it, it shot away from Zwaimo's body like a black light and disappeared. Zwaimo instantly understood, and gritted out, Lil Black, so you were involved too. Lil Pagoda timidly hid behind Silly Bird, the chubby body shivering. Only Silly Bird was not scared, glancing at Zwaimo, her eyes filled with disdain and scorn. She picked up Lil Pagoda and proudly stalked her bird walk away. On the feathers above her but was Lil Black that bounced with the strides. Zwaimo was so angry he almost spat blood. Gong Sun Cha took back his dissatisfied gaze. The new additions to the troops, training until they could barely fight, it was not easy. In war chess, the setup for this was training took at least 1 year. Other than that, it would take more than 2 real battles. That could only be considered just having formed, and was far from a mature troop. As to a troop of 100 battle elite, that was hundreds of li away. However, the troop in front of him, while far from the troop in Gong Sun Cha's heart, but it had started to take the shape of a troop. Like in the areas of organization, like the still immature cooperation. There wasn't much technique in training, but it wasn't as though there were no tricks, such as real combat. Real battles were always able to quickly increase the strength of the group. Gong Sun Cha stared into the distance, his eyes dark, a cold and cruel smile floating at the corner of his mouth. In this 100 battle hell of Little Mountain Jia, did he have to worry there was no chance for actual combat? Chapter 223, Another Transaction. From today onwards, I do not need earth energy. Pu Yao's words were like a pardon. Zwaimo felt a heavy weight had come off. The damned drawing out of earth energy finally ended. Thinking that he didn't have to endure the pain of the earth energy being drawn out, he felt very good. He suddenly thought about the scene in the Sea of Consciousness. Was it connected? He remembered that Pu Yao's face had been very terrible then. Then he noticed a rare hint of hesitation in Pu Yao's voice. Zwaimo did not speak, waiting for Pu Yao's next words. Unexpectedly, Pu Yao did not immediately speak, but remained silent for a long time. Just as Zwaimo almost couldn't bear it, Pu Yao finally spoke, "Let's do a business." "What business?" Zwaimo's guard rose up, the shock in his heart growing stronger. Pu Yao's voice was full of sternness. The more Pu Yao acted out of the ordinary, the more careful he was. He needed to be careful every time he talked business with Pu Yao. "Help me analyze MO matrices." Pu Yao's tone was light. "MO matrices?" "Yes," Pu Yao looked at Zwaimo, "I have a use for them." "What MO matrices?" Zwaimo asked in puzzlement. Pu Yao thought and then said, "Higher level MO matrices, I'll provide you with specimens." This was too general. Zwaimo warily shook his head. "You understand MO matrices better than I do, I can't help you." Even the MO matrix on his body had been carved by Pu Yao. In terms of understanding of Mo matrices, Zhuo thought that he couldn't compare to Pu Yao. Zhuo found it strange that Pu Yao had turned and asked him to analyze Mo matrices. Pu Yao was not angry. Glancing at Zhuo, he said, "You are not wrong, but this only shows that I've lived longer than you. Even though I do not want to admit it, but you are the most talented person I've seen with formations. Right now, you cannot overcome me, but you have the potential. This is heaven-given talent." Seeing Zhuo keeping his silence, Pu Yao continued, "I am not in a rush. I have enough patience. This can only be good for you. I can supply countless types of Mo matrices. What you have to do is very simple, just study them. Copper Rhinoceros Mo matrix is one of the lowest Mo matrices. The effects of those high-level Mo matrices are not things you can imagine." Zhuo's heart moved. Pu Yao had not lied about this. Of the 3 formations he had gained from the Copper Rhinoceros Mo matrix, all of them were very useful, but were not high grade. Take for example the body tempering formation. No matter how strong the Ling energy was, the effect of its tempering would have a limit. If he could receive even higher level Mo matrices, he could find even higher grade formations that were more complete. Even more importantly, the process of analysis was a cultivation progress, and he could increase his understanding of formations. Pu Yao had not finished his pitch. He understood Zhuo's personality. To get this guy to agree to something, it was not hard. He only needed to give something that the other could not refuse. That was what he was doing now. "No matter if it is Xiuzhe or Yaoma, I know at least a bit about all kinds of cultivation methods. I can guide you in your cultivation. Your cultivation is not pure. Ling power, spiritual power, body, you cultivate all of it. If you receive accurate guidance, you might be a miracle. However, if you keep going like this, it would only become more heterogeneous, and in the end, you will achieve nothing." Zhuo knew that Pu Yao's words were not empty threats. Truthfully, he himself had already felt that his strength was too heterogeneous, yet he lacked true understanding of each kind of power. "Or maybe I can help you solve the secret in your body." The last bomb that Pu Yao lightly threw down was like a bolt of lightning. Changing features and erasing the mind, not many Yama use these. Only the cruelest of people would do such things. He glanced at Zhuo, changing features and erasing the mind, it basically cannot be undone. Zhuo's heart sunk. The temperature of the room was not low, but his body felt cold. "Your body has something else." Pu Yao's words were shocking. "What?" The words jumped out of Zhuo's mouth. "A very rare 5-element glass bead." Pu Yao said, "Sealed inside it is another person's power, or maybe something else. There may also be a clue." Pu Yao continued, "If there is no trace inside, then use reverse shadow spirit silkgrass. It is very hard for memories to be completely erased. There would always be some fragments left. If you use reverse shadow spirit silkgrass, you can find these pieces. I know of a place you can find reverse shadow spirit silkgrass." Zhuo was silent. Pu Yao looked at Zhuo and knew he needed time to digest this, closed his mouth and patiently waited. A long time later, Zhuo felt his mind start to move. Staring at Pu Yao, his voice was raspy as he asked Pu Yao, "How do you break the Jinji on the 5-element glass bead? You to reach Jindan, or for me to recover my power? How long would it take me to reach Jindan?" Pu Yao had a careful expression. "I cannot guarantee this." "Okay," unexpected to Pu Yao, Zhuo agreed. Originally, he had wanted to ask Pu Yao why the other wanted him to analyze Mo matrices, but thinking about it, that didn't have anything to do with him. "It seems that we will be in business in the long term." Pu Yao's bloody pupil was a patch of peace, his gaze holding none of the underestimation and arrogance he held previously. The 3 formations Zhuo had discovered from the Copper Rhinoceros Mo matrix had been an enormous blow to him. What had blown Pu Yao away wasn't how exquisite the 3 formations were but Zhuo's efficiency. The time that Pu Yao had spent on pondering MO matrices was longer than Zhuo Mo's lifetime, but he found that his pace was that of a turtle climbing compared to Zhuo Mo. The astounding talent that Zhuo Mo displayed in formations shocked him, and allowed him to see a thread of hope. The effect of the nether pool was not as good as he had imagined. His situation was not good at the moment. Even more, he didn't have many choices. A series of factors forced him into a position of cooperation. Zhuo Mo didn't know these reasons. He didn't need to know. Just the secret in your body that Pu Yao had said was enough for him to agree to this transaction. This matter had always been an illness plaguing his heart. Zhuo Mo was very practical, and he did not have high ambitions. He liked a peaceful life. Even if he knew that his consciousness had been erased, in the depths of his heart, he unconsciously did not hope for himself to enter a life of revenge. Adding on that he had no clues, this matter had been deeply buried inside his heart. His hard work and labors were not for revenge, but to survive. This was his reality. Yet no one could disregard their past, especially when he was told that there was a 5-element glass bead inside his body. His heart was instantly struck. Who put it there? What connection did the person have to him? He wanted to know. Pu Yao was very satisfied with the transaction this time. He was very clear to Zhuo Mo's situation. To an expert who was able to massacre Gong Sun Cha in the war games, and having experienced the 1,000-year battle, Pu Yao's line of thinking was more farsighted than Zhuo Mo. What did Zhuo Mo need most right now? Strength. The troop that Gong Sun Cha had made could only be considered distant water, and distant water could not resolve nearby thirst. The growth of strength had its necessary patterns. Pu Yao knew this, but he naturally had his own reasons to dare to say such words. What he was relying on was not anything other than Zhuo Mo himself. Zhuo Mo's cultivation, due to different reasons, had been constantly suppressed by Pu Yao, and it was this suppression that caused him to be on the precipice of a boundary. His own situation made Pu Yao realize he had to change his strategy. You are at the doorway of a breakthrough, Pu Yao said straightforwardly. Your body cultivation is in mountain physique. Even though it is only one mountain, it is one step away from an abhina. One mountain. Abhina. Zhuo Mo became alert. The mountain physique is divided into 3 strata, one mountain is the first stratum. You have cultivated to mountain physique, absorbed earth energy, your body cultivation has truly made it into the gate. Now that you have reached mountain physique, you are not far from an abhina. Pu Yao said a little lie right there. Originally, Zhuo Mo should have been able to achieve an abhina a long time ago. However, he had deliberately stopped it, and so, even now, he still hadn't formed an abhina. Pu Yao's face didn't blush as he said, abhina is the term used by Diana Xiu. When cultivation of the body reaches a certain level, the self becomes enlightened, and the abhina forms from the self. The abhina is born of the self, and so everyone's abhina is naturally different. Zhuo Mo didn't really understand. Oh, Diana likes talking so mystically. You can understand it like this. What is body cultivation? It is to forge the body as though it is a talisman. When it reaches a certain stage, some abilities would naturally form. Each person's blood and flesh is different, so the abilities are varied. After Pu Yao's explanation, Zhuo Mo felt he understood much more. Talismans, and flying swords, after they were tempered for a long time, they would naturally become more powerful. I can form an abhina. Zhuo Mo was slightly excited. He was very curious what his own abhina was. Oh, pretty much, Pu Yao muddled, absorb more earth energy these next days. That stuff is very useful. In order not to have his lie seen through, he quickly changed the topic. Other than an abhina, there is something else that can dramatically increase your strength. As expected, Zhuo Mo was guided by his words. He was slightly shocked. What is it? He never knew that he had anything on his body that could greatly increase his strength. That 5-element glass bead, Pu Yao said. 5-element glass beads are somewhat rare talismans. It can store Ling power, and turn Ling power into 5-element base source. Turn Ling power to 5-element base source. Zhuo was slightly shocked. He was reminded of Lil Pagoda. Lil Pagoda was able to deconstruct talismans and materials into 5-element energy, but compared to 5-element base source, 5-element energy was the lesser variant. 5-element energy could form marrow, forming 5-element marrow. The little gourds hanging on Lil Pagoda's eaves were 5-element marrow. 5-element base source was the finest and best part of 5-element marrow. Yes, 5-element base source is something very good. When you were injured last time, it was this bead that repaired your body. 5-element base source is very easy to absorb, and suitable for body cultivation. I wonder who put it in, they were really extravagant, Pu Yao said with a smile. Strangely, Zhuo suddenly felt his heart move. This movement was very suddenly. He suddenly had a feeling this 5-element glass bead was very important to him. He could not say why he would have this feeling, but this feeling was strong, so strong to the point that he could not disregard it. He did not know who this 5-element glass bead belonged to, but the person who put this 5-element glass bead in him, it must be one of his closest people. Was it his parents? He raised his head, his tone decisive. Don't use it. Let's cultivate an abhina. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.